conversation increasingly becomes dominated by lunatics. And I don't think that's representative of most Americans. And there's also this problem of lumping in everyone together in like this neat little box of ideology, right? So I think in the minds of a lot of people on the left, you are the exact same person as Tucker Carlson, right? And I think you're different. I think you're different from Matt Walsh. I think you're different from Candace Owens. You guys are all on the same network. I commend you for having differences of opinion on the same network. And I'm sure it can be uncomfortable at times, but there are nuances and differences. And I think it's important for people to be cognizant of that, because I don't want to be lumped in with someone on the far left, right? I have significantly different opinions from them on certain matters. And I think it's important to know what those differences are and not let, again, the extreme ends of the spectrum represent the entire country.
So, one of the things that you mentioned there is the idea that you have to run on something, not run against something. And obviously negative campaigning is the most effective form of campaigning, despite all of the happy talk about how when you campaign for things, people rally behind you. People who are policy wonks tend to do very poorly in elections. People who are attack dogs tend to do very well in elections, because that lizard part of our brain that senses threat is really activated by a perception of threat on the other side.
Well, actually, can I interrupt you on that?
Sure.
Because I agree and disagree. So let's go back to 2016. Because with 2016 several years away, we can now really analyze it for what it was. Donald Trump's campaigning certainly had a significant negative component to it. Negative campaigning was part of what he did. But he also offered, or at least paid lip service to, something that Americans were concerned about, which was bringing manufacturing jobs back to the United States, really taking care of workers in our country, maybe reconsidering some of the foreign aid that the federal government shells out. That appealed to his base, so much so that even today they're so loyal to him, regardless of what he does. So he actually did give people something to vote for. Whereas all we got from the Democratic Party during that election was, ooh, Donald Trump's dangerous. Isn't he so dangerous? Oh my God, don't vote for him, because if you do, you'd be racist, this, that.
Welcome to another RBN Live Tuesdays. I'm your introductory host. I'm CJ or Jay. You can call me. Doing this first hour to cover this conversation. It's a long conversation. So, it's a lot of footage to cover. Of course, it's like an hour and a half, but we'll probably get to like 45 minutes. All right. So that's the reason for the slightly early start. But for those that are here, welcome. Thank you for joining a little bit early. I'm trying to rescue all of us, or I want all of us to rescue each other with some of these conversations that we're going to be having in the future. But in particular today, most cringe thumbnail yet. I don't know if that was of all of us or when it switched to the Ben and Anna, but that was one of our first comments. I've been laughing for a straight 24 hours since I saw the Anna Ben clip. Here we go. I think the only way that Anna can appear left is to be sitting opposite Ben Shapipi. Or Ben Shapiro, for those that are listening. What's up, RBN? What's good? What's up, family? And I think I'll stop there because I do want to get into the video. This is a doozy. So you saw this first clip. There's another clip I'm going to play for you right now before we get to the actual video. So if you're here, we got 100 people already watching. Hit the thumbs up. We should have 100 likes already. So everybody watching, hit that thumbs up like button so that we can get some more people here before the roundtable get here, before Sabby and JB and Nick and Rome get here in about 45 minutes or so. Let's play the other clip. So there's that one. And I only found 2 online, which made me go try to find the video, because initially I was just going to play clips if I was able to find 3 or 4, 4 or 5 clips actually. Was only able to find 2, but listen to this one. If it's gonna play. Let's see if it plays.
I've pretty famously talked about this, and it was the kind of place where I had a very nice house in a pretty decent neighborhood.
This is a tall tale this guy tells right here.
Homelessness has taken over the streets. When I was living there, I mean, I've pretty famously talked about this, and it was the kind of place where I had a very nice house in a pretty decent neighborhood, and we had a gate in the front, and we would open the gate, and there would be a homeless person face down in the gutter, Edgar Allan Poe style, or there would be a guy outside the house shooting heroin into his foot, and I've got like a 5-year-old.
If you believe this shit, it's absurd. So he is trying to tell the tale that, let's just take Beverly Hills, because that's outside of California, that city, if you just say Beverly Hills, people think rich, when actually it's more like Newport Beach. That's like one of the richest cities in California, maybe 30 minutes from me. Newport Beach, but let's say Beverly Hills for those that don't know Newport Beach. He's saying he would walk outside of his house and there would be a homeless person face down in the gutter in Beverly Hills. Does anybody buy that? Do you buy that? That is absolute nonsense. As a person who have lived in California all my life, know LA, Orange County, Riverside County, and Ventura County pretty well, and a good amount of San Diego County. That's absurd. Like in Thousand Oaks. Thousand Oaks is another one. That's in Ventura County. That's a ritzy city. It's a couple of celebrities that live out there. I think Pamela Anderson lives out there, and a bunch of others. That's like saying they come out of that house. Like, is that believable? Does anybody? I mean, anyway, let's continue, because I'm already getting off on a tangent and this is just a clip. So let's continue.
And this sort of stuff has become incredibly common in LA. You noticed it, and you've been getting all sorts of flack for it.
Right, because
so I don't know how. It was so many different titles I wanted to give this conversation with conservatives. So I call it the realignment, because this is a realigning that the pseudo left is doing, aligning themselves with not the Alex Jones, how she would label him, the Alex Jones sort of conservative, but what she would call the Ben Shapiro conservative, or the Tucker Carlson conservative versus the Ben Shapiro conservative. So
when there are problems in society, we need solutions, and you can't find solutions unless you acknowledge what the problem is and then properly diagnose
Here's
it.
where she goes after the
my
left.
biggest issue right now, at least with the way the left has handled the discussion on homelessness in places like Los Angeles, is there's this housing first mentality where, oh, everything would be fine as long as we put everyone in housing. And by the way, let me just note, housing is an important component to this. There is a housing crisis. There's a lack of inventory. I think we all know that. We do need to build more housing. But at the same time, treating the homeless population as if it's a monolith has been a complete failure. There is a...
When I'm trying, in this framing here, does she mean treating the homeless population as a monolith, meaning the monolith, the thing that holds them together, the monolithic trait is being unhoused? Isn't that all the same? Or is she saying, with the housing first sort of approach, she's basically saying we can't supply housing for everybody, so we need to dice some people up and put them in different organizations like jail, like mental institutions forcibly. That's what she's getting at here. Let's let the clip finish, and then I'll comment.
Huge mental health crisis happening in this country. So people with severe mental health issues are just left to die on the streets. And in some cases, because they are experiencing an episode, they could carry out some sort of act of violence and assault someone. And it's a dangerous situation for...
How is this any different? And why... I'm trying to drill down to her comment about treating the homeless, her housing first, and the monolith comment about the homeless population. She's trying to say giving everybody houses is not the solution because some people have mental issues. Is that what you're trying to say, Anna? So why wouldn't it be treat their mental issue and they have a house? How does the housing part change? So if you think by saying first, housing first, that means we don't mean treat mental health issues. We can have a mental health conversation. But the problem to homelessness, meaning the issue of not having a structure over your head, the solution to that is a house. Now, getting everybody housed, of course, you're going to treat the individual issue. This is the need for nationalized health care, including mental health. Mental health. So let's continue.
Everyone, okay? The people who are just trying to go about their day and the person who is left on the streets battling with this untreated mental health issue. There are people who are obviously struggling with drug addiction, and you look at the number of overdose deaths and it has skyrocketed. The approach that we have implemented is clearly not working. More people.
What approach is that? Because we haven't implemented the housing first approach.
People are dying. And I get so much flack for saying this. I want an actual solution. It is insanely cruel to watch people.
This is not the reason why you get flack. You get flack is because when you talk about this particular subject, you sound exactly like a Karen. You don't sound like a person concerned with mental health. You don't sound like a person concerned with people having issues with drug addiction. You sound like a person concerned with getting homeless people out of your sight. That's why you get flack. Now let's move to YouTube, and I'm moving quickly here because, like I said, I want to get to as much of this interview. It's an hour and a half. I know we're not going to do all of it, but I want to get to as much of this interview as I can here. Is this it? Hold on a second. Oh, my daughters are watching something. This is Ben Shapiro. Why did you agree to come on my show? I don't even need to see that. Let me just go to my history. Pull up the video. So the video is on Ben. The one I'm getting is on Ben Shapiro's site because I believe she went on his show. Is what I believe. So yeah. So what I'm going to do is actually an hour and 40 minutes. I'm just going to play a little bit in the beginning so you can grasp how they're describing this. And then a little bit, and then we'll move to more of the meat and potatoes of this conversation. So let's start here.
Me?
So first of all, we have to take on the elephant in the room. You are braving grave danger by coming on a show like this one. So what's prompting you to actually join me on the show? Because it is hard to get people who disagree on shows like this one, for sure.
Well, I think that it's important to talk to people you disagree with, debate and hash out some of the ideas that we have and the differences we have. I'm not afraid of my political views. I'm not afraid to admit when maybe I got something wrong in the past and maybe I've evolved on my political views. It's just really, really important in a functioning democracy to have Americans see one another as fellow Americans, as opposed to an identity that needs to be super combative with a different identity. And I think that's what we've kind of turned into. You and I clearly have a lot of disagreements on policy, disagreements on culture, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're an awful person. It doesn't mean that I should be afraid of you. If anything, I should prove that I genuinely believe my political views by engaging in these debates.
So I'm just giving you an essence. I'm going to move this forward a little bit, but I'm giving you the essence of how this is all bullshit. She is basically, she's in front of a large audience, and she's giving, a student answer that does not apply in regular life to her. Just go look at her videos. So let's continue.
If I can defend what I believe with actual facts, statistics, empirical evidence, well, that only proves that there's good reason to believe in the policies that I'm promoting. And it's easy to be in an echo chamber where everyone already agrees with you, but you're not really being challenged. So I like to be challenged. I like to put my political ideas to the test, and I think this is a good opportunity to do it.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I really like about you as a person. We actually got to know each other when we did a debate about a year ago, I think, over in Pennsylvania, and we were talking in the green room beforehand, and we got along as human beings. And one of the things that's nice about conversations like this is, again, what you say, I think is super important, which is that the social fabric of.
So I'm going to do something. I'm going to roll this forward, and we're going to see. So we're at the 2 minute, almost 3 minute mark. Let's move forward to almost 6 minutes and see what the conversation
that it gave me a better idea and sense of who you are. One of the issues I've had in recent years is the characterizing or the caricatures that are drawn of the other side. And I think the left does it, the right does it. So just kind of like lumping you in with, let's say, Tucker Carlson, lumping you in with, I don't know, someone else that I certainly don't think is coming at
get the framing there.
These debates from a good faith perspective. They're looking for clicks. They're looking to build their public.
So I know less about Ben Shapiro. Is he like a Tucker Carlson? For those that are in the watching in the comments, is Ben Shapiro like a Tucker Carlson? And now put your comments up if you can answer that question. I like this one. Anna playing Enlightened Citrus now. That is what she's playing right now. That is absolutely what she's playing. I guess there's no answers to that, maybe? Oh, yes. Yes, he is. Okay. So he does the populist racism sort of stuff also sometimes? Oh, he's worse. Wow, he's worse. Why is she making it seem like Tucker is worse and Ben's the one that's more in the center? He's further to the right? Let's see what Eric says right here. Yeah, Ben and Tucker are twins, basically. All right, I guess I'm learning something here. All right, so let's continue.
Persona. There's a lot of that going on. You're a pretty respectful person when we're engaging in these debates. I don't really see you trying to draw caricatures of me as we're.
So, again, we're at 2:42 when they were talking and pleasing each other, talking about each other. Now we're at 6 minutes, doing the same thing. Let's move to 8 minutes. Let's see what the
and think to myself, oh, well, actually, he had a point there. So I think the necessity for nuclear energy is a good example of that. Once I realized right now the technology for renewables isn't quite where we need it to be, where we can just give up fossil fuels and be okay. Well, a good clean energy solution to kind of close that gap, at least for now, would be nuclear. And you say that, and a lot of people on the left have a negative reaction to it. But I think.
Wow. Wow. She is you see why I call it the realignment? Okay, so Ben is Tucker minus anti-Semitism. Okay. Anna is just making salad. Lots of comments on who Tucker. Okay, so let's read this one. Tucker is a Republican who has pretended to accept that some people are gay, then just defaults to his Judaism as on every social issue. Okay, so now I'm assuming he's a Jew since you say that. Ben Shapiro and Anna will have kids. Just interview, and I'm putting everyone's head. Okay. Oh, maybe you're gonna Photoshop something. Okay, so let's get back to the interview.
I think it's partly because they're not typically exposed to other perspectives. Everyone's kind of in their own ideological bubble. It's a huge problem, in my opinion, and that's why I want to have conversations.
I mean,
like
that's
this
a great example. So I've always used nuclear energy as actually the litmus test on people who take climate change seriously. There are people on both sides who don't, right? There are people on the right who will say that it doesn't exist, that there has been no global warming over the course of the last 100 years, or who say that there is no anthropogenic global warming. It's entirely the fault of the sun. And my perspective has always been, I don't have the expertise to challenge the IPCC when they suggest that there will be a certain amount of climate change. They're sort of outlying more extreme predictions are the ones that have sort of the least predictability, and they admit that. And so the question becomes, what do we do in order to prevent as much of this as possible while still maintaining a lifestyle that Westerners are used to and that we should aspire to for.
You see the second part? It's how do you do that? How do you help the planet while keeping our lifestyle? Get the fuck out.
The rest of the world. And nuclear energy has always been a great way of doing that. And so that perspective
so you see the realignment. You see the realignment here happening.
Tended to draw fire from both sides.
Example.
You have people who say, well, why are you even acknowledging that this sort of thing is that you sound like Greta Thunberg? And then you'll have people on the left saying, well, how he doesn't even believe in global warming because he is advocating for nuclear energy. That sort of failure of nuance, I think, has really deleterious effects because it prevents us from accomplishing solutions that, if you and I can agree on a thing, it's a pretty good notion that that's a fairly commonsensical thing because we disagree on so many things. That if we can agree on something like nuclear energy, then really there's not that much to argue about.
And I mean, nuclear energy does not emit the type of climate emissions, climate-causing emissions that other fossil fuel, oil, natural gas, that definitely does have an impact. It contributes to the climate emergency. So anyone who is against nuclear energy, I think there are some points that are legitimate. So for instance, people are concerned about another Chernobyl. I totally understand that. But the technology has improved since then, better safeguards.
Not run by the communist Russians. Yes.
Yeah. But look, these are conversations that should be had, and we should be fearless in having these conversations. I feel confident in my beliefs and my values, but I also really want to get into basically a culture that leaves ego aside and helps people feel comfortable acknowledging when, hey, maybe I didn't get something right. Because there are certainly areas where, turns out, I didn't get something right. I used to be 100% against nuclear. I thought nuclear would be super dangerous. I totally bought into like the Chernobyl related.
Yeah, exactly.
But once you start reading into it a little more, once you actually start thinking for yourself independently, independent of some ideological.
Independent of ideology. Oh, good Lord. So we're seeing this. We're seeing this realignment. We see people. Now think about what they were saying about us. Some of us on the further left, they were saying, Red Brown Alliance, you guys are always talking about teaming up with people you don't agree with in the conservative side. That's the realignment to them. And they're choosing to stay in the middle and move slightly to the right to other people who are also in the center, but just on the right. This realignment that's happening is the result of the DSA and people like the Squad and progressives clinging and deciding to run within the Democratic Party. And when the Democratic Party moves right, you have to move right. This is a shame, but let's continue.
model that you're supposed to fit into perfectly. It really does open your horizons, and it allows for you to learn. And that's what I want to do. I want to learn, and I want to make sure that the information I'm getting to my audience is well thought out and accurate.
So, I think what's really interesting about
that so does not describe TYT. That so does not describe who TYT is.
Super divided.
So in a second, I want to talk to you about the incentive structure for
Sure.
avoiding exactly kind of the thing that we're doing right now. First, it's time to talk about Daily Wire's most trusted privacy partner and the premier sponsor of this show, ExpressVPN. Have you ever read the fine print that appears when you start browsing party to get more extreme? The idea being needs to understand that's a thing that.com/Ben.
Okay.
Again, use my link, expressvpn.com/Ben, and that means you will get an extra 3 months for free. That's expressvpn.com/Ben to protect all of your online activity today. Don't leave your data out there for somebody else to grab it, whether it's your ISP or a hacker or anybody else. Go check them out at expressvpn.com/Ben to get started.
Wow.
So let's talk about the incentive structures in not having conversations like this.
Sure.
One of the things that I'm seeing, it's what we would call in the industry nut picking. You try to find people on the other side who say the wildest possible things, or you take them out of context so they sound like they're saying the wildest possible things, and then you critique that in order to drive up ire. And I think all of us do this. I mean, we're all in the media, which means you very often are playing a 20, 30-second clip of somebody. It's not a long-form conversation like this one because they're just different formats, and we all get this. I think the audience also needs to understand that's a thing that happens. What's more dangerous is when that, I think, carries over into the political sphere, where you have people in each political party who are now attempting to draw and actually incentivize the other party to get more extreme. The idea being, what if we make the other party so extreme that they are unpalatable?
Did he just say, or is he saying that basically podcasters and people in media should be able to exaggerate, but not politicians? I think that's what he's saying here. Let's where are we at? Back it up a little bit. Let's see.
On the fringe is now not represented in the election. And what you've ended up doing is incentivizing the kind of most angry part of one party, and in your own party, making them the most angry that they could possibly be about the other party, as opposed to, what if we all just sort of pick our best candidates and then let them go at it in the ring?
I mean, I wish that was the actual.
I think I moved it forward instead of backwards. So we're going to hear that part, but I want to hear this snippet.
Party to get more extreme. The idea being, what if we make the other party so extreme that they are unpalatable to the majority of the American people? They elect us, we win, we get to do what we want. Now, that in the short term actually may get them some wins, right? I think this is one of the things that happened in the 2022 election, particularly in the Senate. You saw some Democrats who are actually supporting.
Okay, so I get the line of the interview that he's making here. I mean the point that he's making here. So yeah, he did kind of acknowledge, yeah, we all do this in media where we just kind of play 30-second clips and blah blah blah. But he's saying the problem when that moves into the political arena and when you're doing that, and that's where he was describing sort of like the results when parties do that. So let's rewind it and hear this again.
In order to drive up ire. And I think all of us do this. I mean, we're all in the media, which means you very often are playing a 20, 30-second clip of somebody. It's not a long-form conversation like this one because they're just different formats. And we all get this.
It is okay.
The audience also needs to understand that's a thing that happens. What's more dangerous is when that, I think, carries over into the political sphere, where you have people in each political party who are now attempting to draw and actually incentivize the other party to get more extreme. The idea being, what if we make the other party so extreme that they are unpalatable to the majority of the American people? They elect us, we win, we get to do what we want. Now, that in the short term actually may get them some wins, right? I think this is one of the things that happened.
That's actually exactly what's happening. When then CNN and MSNBC, why is everybody so polarized? Because that's what you did. You make the other side so terrible that, yeah, you might win, but then you can't negotiate any sort of compromise, because how are you now going to compromise with the demon and the Satan you just described to get elected? Yeah. Let's listen.
In the 2022 election, particularly in the Senate, you saw some Democrats who are actually supporting the most kind of out of the box, crazy Republican candidates like Don Baldock in New Hampshire in the primaries in order to elevate him, thinking, okay, well, that means he's going to lose, which is exactly what happened. It's actually quite smart strategy in the short term, but what it also ends up doing is it ends up fringing out the moderates, meaning like everybody who is not on the fringe is now not represented in the election. And what you've ended up doing is incentivizing the kind of most angry part of one party, and in your own party, making them the most angry that they could possibly be about the other party, as opposed to, what if we all just sort of pick our best candidates?
You're just describing red and blue MAGAs. Okay, so we got to red and blue MAGA.
And let them go at it in the ring.
I mean, I wish that was the actual method and strategy, but you would actually have to have a campaign strategy that offers the voters something to vote on instead of something to vote against. And I think that this has actually been an incredibly dangerous strategy for the Democratic Party, because they might feel super confident that their candidates can beat someone who's on the extreme right, but there have been instances where that wasn't the case. I mean, certainly in 2016, the Democratic National Committee was really propping up Donald Trump under the assumption that there's no way Hillary Clinton would lose to Donald Trump. Well, here we are. I mean, Donald Trump won, clearly. So there's that part of it. I also think when you consider the campaign donations that ordinary people give to the Democratic Party, they were not under the assumption that their hard-earned money was going to go toward far-right candidates in order to, give these Democratic candidates a leg up in their mind. I mean, again, it's very, very risky to do that. I don't think it's a smart strategy at all. For the Democrats, even in the short term, again, it's risky. Okay, sometimes they get it wrong. And if you don't give people something to vote for, meaning if you don't have policy proposals, actual solutions that are appealing to voters, are they going to show up just to vote against the person you've been fear-mongering about? I don't think it's smart at all. Aside from that, I think what you're saying is also correct in that the conversation increasingly becomes dominated by lunatics. And I don't think that's representative of most Americans.
I don't understand. How were they not part of the lunatics? These are the largest channels on YouTube. TYT, I think they have 5 million. If somebody can correct me in the chat if you want. And I think he has like 5 million, over 5 million. You guys are the ones leading the conversation. So who are you describing? Because on TYT, there's a bunch of Marjorie Taylor Greene shit. Would you categorize her? Your content is based on all the extreme people that you're saying we shouldn't be talking about. Literally, TYT's content is Trump. It's, who was that girl, the lady from Arizona? I think her name is Carrie Lake for a while. Herschel, it's all the extreme people. So who are they talking about? It's how are the lunatics that is being dominated are by you two that are sitting here.
There's also this problem of lumping in everyone together in like this neat little box of ideology.
We watched,
right?
But
so
let's watch it again here.
I think in the minds of a lot of people on the left, you are the exact same person as Tucker Carlson, right? And I think you're different. I think you're different from Matt Walsh. I think you're different from Candace Owens. You guys are all on the same network. I commend you for having differences of opinion on the same network. And
I commend you for having differences of opinion on the same network. Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, and whoever else she mentioned. That's really differences of opinion? Is that really differences of opinion?
And I'm sure it can be uncomfortable at times, but there are nuances and differences. And I think it's important for people to be cognizant of that, because I don't want to be lumped in with someone on the far left, right?
The far left. What would be defined by the far left? Defund the police? Housing first? What is the far left to her? I can only go off your content, and I know you hate the homeless population. You can care less what the solution is. You just want them out of your sight. I know you're not down for defund the police, I believe. You're not down for pushing the squad, even though you'll do a couple of segments of where you yell.
I have significantly different opinions from them on certain matters. And I think it's important to know what those differences are and not let, again, the extreme ends of the spectrum represent.
So it's usually the far right, the far left, us radicals, who are saying, don't lump us in with the left when you say left and liberals. Now the liberals are saying that. They don't want to be associated with defund the police. They don't want to be associated with anti-war, anti-imperialism. They don't want to be associated with socialism, I guess.
The entire country.
So, one of the things that you mentioned there is the idea that you have to run on something, not run against something. And obviously, negative campaigning is the most effective form of campaigning, despite all of the happy talk about how when you campaign for things, people rally behind you. People who are policy wonks tend to do very poorly in elections. People who are attack dogs tend to do very well in elections because that lizard part of our brain that senses threat is really activated by a perception of threat on the other side.
Well, actually, can I interrupt you on that?
Sure.
Because I agree and disagree. So let's go back to 2016. Because with 2016 several years away, we can now really analyze it for what it was. Donald Trump's campaigning certainly had a significant negative component to it. Negative campaigning was part of what he did. But he also offered, or at least paid lip service to, something that Americans were concerned about, which was bringing manufacturing jobs back to the United States, really taking care of workers in our country, maybe reconsidering some of the foreign aid that the federal government shells out.
He ran as a so-called right populist.
That appealed to his base, so much so that even today they're so loyal to him, regardless of what he does. So he actually did give people something to vote for. Whereas all we got from the Democratic Party during that election was, ooh, Donald Trump's dangerous. Isn't he so dangerous? Oh my God, don't vote for him because if you do, you'd be racist, this, that. It was just nonstop scolding. If that is what your strategy is, I don't think that it's a winning strategy, sometimes in the short term, but certainly not in the long term.
So that does raise the question as to what you think the Democratic Party should run on.
Right.
So the Democratic Party has radically shifted its appeal over the course of the last 15 to 20 years. If you go back to 2004, it was John Edwards running on sort of the Two Americas platform, which sounds a lot like sort of the language that Bernie Sanders uses when he talks about the United States, right? A lot of what he talks about is this sort of class divisions in the United States. It's very much focused on economic redistributionism, focusing on the blue-collar worker. This is obviously the audience that he's attempting to drive out to the polls. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party, if you look at it demographically, seems to have become the party largely of upscale white liberals who went to college and low-income minorities. And that's a very fragile coalition because the truth is that I'm not sure that those people have tons and tons in common. White upscale liberals tend to be very concerned with questions of equity far more than people who are actually low-income minorities, like by polling data. The sort of woke concerns that everybody on the right likes to pick on, that is white upper-crust liberals who are pushing that. That is not minorities who are pushing that sort of stuff. I remember having this conversation with Van Jones, and he was totally agreeing with me. He's like, what are all these white upper-crust liberals doing talking about this sort of stuff? They should be talking about sort of the bread and butter issues.
All of this stuff he's saying applies to Anna. Like this entire last sentence or two literally applies to Anna. He is describing Anna to a T.
And so you have the white upper crust liberals pushing that, plus a solid dose of kind of very social leftist policy ranging from abortion to transgenderism to same-sex marriage. And
isn't he describing her? Everything he's saying here is her. So let's see how this happens here. Let's see what happens here.
And those sorts of policies that are not the chief concern of low-income minorities. And it seems like the way that they're getting low-income minorities to sort of resonate to the message is with the threat assessment of the Republican Party. The Republican Party is racist. They don't like you. They hate you. Donald Trump's evil. And all the rest of that. It seems like they dodged the bullet in 2022, but that's a very fragile coalition.
Well, I see this as a problem.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I wonder, does she know that he was literally describing her? I wonder if he intentionally was describing her. How 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 can that? How can you
Well,
not see
honestly,
that's
on both
all of
sides,
her?
campaigning on both sides. I think that increasingly you have both parties completely captured by campaign donations from wealthy donors, corporate donations. I think that's been a problem. That has led to pro corporate policy by both Democrats and, I mean, Republicans have always been in that camp. But now Democrats have been so captured with that money. And then the other thing is, Ben, it's a huge problem that we have members of Congress invested in individual stocks that they are.
Do you know she just skipped over the point he made and she went completely to something different? Do you think that's not a tell that she knows what he just described as her? She just skipped over what he said and said, "No, I'm moving somewhere else, buddy. I can't." Let's listen to this last 30 or 40 seconds again.
2022, but that's a very fragile coalition.
Well, I see this as a problem, honestly, on both sides, campaigning on both sides. I think that increasingly you have both parties completely captured by campaign donations from wealthy donors, corporate donations. I think that's been a problem. That has led to pro corporate policy by both Democrats and, I mean, Republicans have always been in that camp. But now Democrats have been so captured with that money. And then the other thing is, Ben, it's a huge problem that we have members of Congress invested in individual stocks that they are legislating about or legislating on. Because, first of all, that there's an insider trading issue there, number one, conflict of interest. And also, they're going to want their stock portfolios to perform well. So are they going to pass the right legislation to protect the consumer, to protect the worker, to protect the average American when they are literally invested in ensuring that those companies do real well because they profit off of that as well? So that is a huge problem. And so what you have now is both sides, in my opinion, campaigning on a bunch of BS. Okay, not actually focusing on what would improve this country for Americans, what would improve this country for the voters. It's just nonstop distractions. I mean, look, this is what we're seeing right now with the investigations in the House, right? The first thing Republicans said was, we're going to do investigations into Hunter Biden. We're going to investigate this. Fine, do the.
I don't understand. The Democrats did the same thing. They did the same thing with impeachment and January 6th. What is she talking about?
Investigations. I don't really care, right? I'm not some loyalist to the Bidens at all by any means. But the culture war stuff, the investigations, it's really important for Americans to understand. None of this stuff at the end of the day is going to improve your life. Okay.
So I guess this is what they're doing. They're talking in the same room, talking about each other, but pretending like they're talking about somebody else because she's describing him now. Does he not do culture war stuff? Is he not down for the investigations for Hunter Biden? So this is what the professional managerial class does, and then they label it like they're having a discussion to move the political conversation forward. You guys are describing a problem that both of you are the number one contributors to, and then describe details of the problem, which describes the opposite person, and everybody's pretending like y'all not talking about each other, like it doesn't apply to you.
Okay, so all the
These are two entities that see the value in bringing in two interviewers or two people, two political public figures who have platforms of 5 million each, seeing the advantage of interviewing, the entertainment value. That's all this is. There's no substance here. This is not, and this is not even a debate. So we can call it a fake debate, but this is not even a debate. This is people who don't really disagree on that much, coming together to pretend like, oh, we're having a conversation to break down the walls when you are the problem.
Actions, we need to be privy to the fact that they're distractions, and we need to get back to actually hashing out what policies need to pass in order to make sure that Americans are thriving.
So this does raise the question for me of localism versus sort of national policy. So when you point out, for example, that both parties are subject to regulatory capture or that they're subject to their own stock portfolio, some people would say, okay, elect better people. We need to, if we just elect people of this party, it'll fix it. If we elect this guy, he's going to fix it. And then there's the sort of Thomas Sowell position, which is it's not a problem of people, it's a problem of incentive structures.
Yes,
incentive structures in Congress are just broken.
Yep.
And when you have this number of people, 435 people in Congress, who are controlling this amount of money and this amount of regulatory power, that will corrupt, right? I mean, you put that much power at the hands of a very small cadre of people, whether you're talking about in the executive branch, in the regulatory state, whether you're talking about people in the legislative branch, it's innately going to tempt them to enrich themselves and self-serve and self-heal. I mean, this is something that the founders actually were very much focused on, which was the idea the federal government was going to have very little power. And so this does raise the question of how much power you think the federal government ought to have. Because if we're talking about, kind of the solutions that get implemented, I'm a big fan of the idea that California ought to be California and Florida ought to be Florida. And basically that may be the only way that California and Florida can share a nation is if they are allowed to do what they want in their own particular purviews. But we, because of nationalized social media, and because of the amount of power that's in the federal government, we focus in on the federal government. That means that we care deeply about what happens on the federal level every single day. If you went back 200 years, no one cared who the president was because the president didn't have that much power. So what do you think of the idea of sort of delegating power back down to the states instead of centralizing back up into a central government that does have the capacity to be used by both sides for corrupt purposes, for example?
It depends. I mean, I think that, it's funny because I've always been super focused on national politics, but over the last several years, I've been a lot more honestly fascinated with what's happening in California. I think for obvious reasons, local politics.
Homeless population is really bothering her. That shit's really bothering her. That's what she's focusing on.
Is fascinating to me. And in terms of what impacts my day-to-day life, I've realized that these local decisions have more of an impact than what's happening on a federal level. There's a lot of gridlock and a lot of nonsense happening on a federal level. So I think that's part of the reason why it's not coming down to impact our lives on a daily basis. I think the federal government should be tasked with important regulations to protect the consumer because greed is a thing. Okay, the fiduciary responsibility to shareholders is real. And so how do you balance that with the need to protect workers and consumers? I think you need a federal government and a regulatory body to focus on that. When it comes to civil rights, you need that protection on a federal level. You can't just leave it to the states. You don't want one state to say, nah, we're not into interracial marriage. We're going to ban that. Or we don't want to, have equal rights based on or equal rights for everyone. Some races we like more than others. You need a federal government to protect civil rights. But I do agree with you that Americans have not been paying enough attention to what's happening on a local level. There are certain things that can be dealt on a local level that doesn't need to be the responsibility of the federal government. And to be quite honest with you, with all the dysfunction and gridlock with the federal government, I think more and more people are relying on a local level to get policy passed that they desperately need.
So in a second, I want to talk to you about local politics versus national, because I think that the national politics does lead to extraordinary polarization, whereas, as we'll talk about in a moment, when it comes to local politics, everyone gets a lot more moderate when they're talking about their own particular
That's very
community.
True.
First, the debt ceiling is now above $31.4 trillion. Inflation is still well above 7%. People are getting fired at major companies all across America. Well, let's say you wanted to hedge your bets against the future of our economy. The best thing to do would probably be to diversify at least a little bit into precious metals. For over 5,000 years, gold has withstood inflation, geopolitical turmoil, and stock market crash.
Turn to the camera.
Leave me alone, leave my children alone, leave my life alone, leave me alone. If you leave me alone in my community with people who I have chosen to live with, which means that we are going to have much more commonality of interest, we're going to come to a policy that works much better for me and my family than people who live 1,000 miles away and who don't know me, don't know my family, don't care about me. And I think that, that return to localism may be the only way forward for the country. I want to talk to you about what's happening in LA. So obviously, I grew up in LA. I spent my entire life in LA until 2 years ago when I picked up my entire family and moved over here. Now my parents live here. My in-laws live here. 2 of my sisters live here. There's been a mad rush to Florida, particularly by people who are sort of the red state mentality. But I don't think it's purely about like, I needed to be in a conservative area. Again, I'd lived my entire life only in blue areas, whether it was Los Angeles or Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Well, I see it's whenever y'all want to jump in, y'all jump in, and we can get started with the other topics. This is really just entertainment value, everybody, because this is not a
When I was in
serious
law school.
debate.
And so the thing that drove me out of California is I think one of the things that you've been picking up on and getting a lot of flack from your own side for picking up on, and that is that LA has just become a trash heap. I mean, it's been governed awfully. Forget about who's governing it.
Right.
The policies that have been used to govern it are just terrible. You have an increase in crime. Homelessness has taken over the streets. When I was living there, I mean, I've pretty famously talked about this. I mean, it was the kind of place where I had a very nice house in a pretty decent neighborhood, and we had a gate in the front. And we would open the gate, and there would be a homeless person face down in the gutter, Edgar Allan Poe style, or there would be a guy outside the house shooting heroin into his foot. And I've got like a 5-year-old. And this sort of stuff has become incredibly common in LA. You noticed it, and you've been getting all sorts of flack for it.
Right, because when there are problems in society, we need solutions. And you can't find solutions unless you acknowledge what the problem is and then properly diagnose it. So my biggest issue right now, at least with the way the left has handled the discussion on homelessness in places like Los Angeles, is there's this housing first mentality where, oh, everything would be fine as long as we put everyone in housing. And by the way, let me just note, housing is an important component to this. There is a housing crisis. There's a lack of inventory. I think we all know that. We do need to build more housing. But at the same time, treating the homeless population as if it's a monolith has been a complete failure. There is a huge mental health crisis happening in this country. So people with severe mental health issues are just left to die on the streets. And in some cases, you know, because they are experiencing an episode, they could carry out some sort of.
I see y'all. Whenever y'all join, we can start with a new topic. This is purely entertainment.
Act of violence and assault someone.
I thought it was a real
and
debate.
It's a dangerous situation for everyone. Okay, the people who are just trying to go about their day, and the person who is left on the streets battling with this untreated mental health issue. There are people
what you're hearing in this part right here is that Ben Shapiro is saying, "Hey, the homeless population, the homeless problem, that became such a problem, I left the state." And he's saying, I noticed you're taking a lot of flack for your assessment of what's happening with the homeless population in Los Angeles, which is essentially the same assessment he has. So this is where they have their agreement on to go ahead and forcibly put some homeless people in shelters. I don't know really where they want to put them because they just want them out of their sight. Because when you hear Ben Shapiro talk, he didn't say that guy who was addicted to drugs, anything, oh, you know, he needed treatment. Oh, the homeless person, you know, I was concerned. It's just that these people who are in these conditions, I want them out of my sight. And that's essentially the same. Somebody keeps texting me. That's essentially the same. Oh, that's wrong. That's essentially the same position that he had before he left.
Or obviously struggling with drug addiction. And you look at the number of overdose deaths, and it has skyrocketed. The approach that we have implemented is clearly not working. More people are dying. And I get so
You don't get
much flack for saying this. I want an actual solution. It is insanely cruel to watch people die on our streets and then give yourself a pat on the back because you think you did something compassionate. That is not compassionate. You know, there's this insanity right now where, let's say we're talking about the same person struggling with a severe mental health issue. They're living on the streets, asking them if they are willing to take the housing that's offered to them. But they can, okay, someone who has a severe mental health issue,
Hey,
I know.
Savvy. I really can't believe she's saying this, Sab. I really can't believe that she is actually saying this on camera about the homeless population, because how I take what she's saying here, and we can end it here because everybody's going to be joining. What I take that she's saying is that she wants to forcibly put some people in treatment. Like, if you're homeless, you shouldn't have a choice in where you get shelter. You just need to go there and follow the rules of whatever the rules are.
Yep.
That what it sounds like to me. Is that sort of like what you're hearing also, Sabby?
Yeah, she talked about this one time on TYT. This was like I think a year ago. Me and Afeni talked about it, and it was her and Jink, and she was saying that she did want them to be put in shelters, and also she was advocating for criminalizing homeless people too, which actually makes sense considering, the guy who gave them that $20 million, Katzenberg.
Yeah,
He was actually trying to push for an initiative for that to happen in Los Angeles.
I heard about that.
Mm-hmm.
Or I read about that. Maybe you and I, or we talked about it or something. But I did see an article about that and how he was the one. And wasn't he backing Caruso too, or something like that? I think he was also funding Caruso.
And so did
What's
Jink.
up, Nick?
What's popping, people? What's popping? I'm glad you did this coverage earlier because I can't with these motherfuckers. I watched it a bit. I was watching your coverage a little bit, and I rage quit immediately. And then I now saw a little bit of the coverage here now, and this is why I'm extremely glad I stumbled into Marxism, and this is what no Marxist analysis does to a motherfucker. TYT, Majority Report, and a Kasparian. This is what happens when there's no Marxist analysis. This is what happens when there's zero class analysis when it comes to your politics. When you acknowledge the fact that Anna Kasparian is a rich, privileged white girl, of course she has the position that she has on homeless. Once you understand that these class antagonisms cannot be reconciled through the electoral process, so people see Anna Kasparian supporting their favorite progressives, so they think she's on the side, that's not how it works. And if you don't have any sort of Marxist analysis, you're going to be lost. You're not only going to be Anna, you're going to be one of the people that listen to Anna and think that she has something of value to say. So that's only
not to mention, like, some of the homeless people, some of those people in those tent communities have jobs. I mean, this theory that all of those people are on drugs is ridiculous. We have the same problem here. I mean, it's just these are people that have been either pushed out. Some of them have been pushed out because of gentrification or because they lost their job. And that's what happens if you're living paycheck to paycheck. But no, she's showing her class. Like, she's showing you exactly what she believed. Jink Uger too. Like, they've been showing their class. I think for the past year, they've been showing people how they really feel. And for people who say that all those homeless people should just stay in shelters, people need to understand that as someone who worked with shelters before, I can tell you a lot of those shelters have rules, very strict rules, and some of them have a curfew, CJ. So if you're homeless and you have a job where you're working at night, you may not make curfew. So you can't stay in the shelter. Some shelters don't allow children. So if you're homeless and you have a kid and it's a shelter, the closest one near you doesn't allow kids, what are you supposed to do with your kid?
I wonder why do people who are against this, especially people like Anna, who have this sort of point of view, why is it they always pick out druggies and what's the other one? Like they are druggies and a mental issue. Like 40%, I think you covered this, Nick. 40% of the homeless population, I think you said is black, and I can't remember the amount you reported on where you said had jobs. I think you're muted, Nick. Yeah, you're muted. Yeah.
Oops,
so you got to say all of that again.
I also want to mention as well that there is no way Anna Kasparian is a good faith actor. She's taking money from Krakenberg and she's a DNC op. The Democratic Party want to justify more police spending, so they send people like Anna Kasparian out there to fearmonger over lefty criminal justice ideas. She's not a good faith actor. The reason why I say this is because not like she's ignorant. Like, she had Olayemi on her show. Yep. And then Olayemi destroyed all the talking points that she still uses to this day. So it's not like she didn't bring her on to learn. She, like, so many abolitionists, so many people who still believe for whatever reason that TYT is anywhere near on the left. They're like, oh my God, Anna, let me explain to you why you're getting this wrong. So many people had a conversation with them, and they still repeating lazy talking points. These are not people making innocent mistakes. These are people who spread an agenda. It's not like they're not exposed to this information. But I want to say what's good, JB.
Yes,
I thought your
what's up to
conversation with
JB?
Wyatt.
Yes.
My man had Wyatt Reed on. My man JB. Why you not tell me we got any powerful guests on, bro? I always be shocked. I'm like, man, JB talking to Wyatt Reed. If you guys not subscribed to JB's channel, what are you doing? You guys missing all the good guests. He had Marty Kimberly on not too long ago too. Wyatt Reed. Who else you had on? I've been seeing you had a lot of good guests. What's up, JB?
You know what, Nick? Look, I'm trying to be like you. That's what it is. I'm trying to nickify myself. I said Nick-ify. Not the other word.
Okay, we almost got the
I was about to say.
Wait. I know CJ's eyes were wide. Like what? I said Nick N-I-C-K. It's fine. That's what I said.
I remember George Galloway.
Look, YouTube, you better not try to get us with that copyright. That strike saying, "Oh, you guys said a bad word." No, I made up a word based on Nick's name.
Yeah, I remember when I was on George Galloway show when he cut my segment, he was like cruise control. I was like, "Come on, bro." Come on, bro.
I needed that laugh. No, I needed that laugh because I just got some negative news. So I needed that, but thank you. But yeah, so I had Wyatt Reed on. So that was a really great conversation that we had regarding the U.S. hegemony and what prompted him to get into journalism. And so that was a great conversation that we had, and I can't wait to have him back on. And come to find out, he didn't really go to college like me. So it's like it just goes to show that just because you didn't, it just goes to show that even if you're not college educated, you can still get out there and still do the damn thing, like Sabby likes to say, and you could actually make an impact when in regards to telling the truth. And I'll be also doing a couple more live streams this week, special live streams this week. This Thursday, I'll be having on Jimmy Dore at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then I'll also be having on Noah Krejcivik from Midwestern Marks. He's also going to be on as well. So it's going to be a pretty full week.
Dude, JB, you keep taking my guess, bro, because you had you had to do diligence, guys.
Yeah. Hey, Nick, I'm a copycat. Look, we're socialists. We collaborate. I borrow. I don't steal.
I remember you had Margaret Kimberly on, and I was literally just about to reach out to her. And so when Margaret was on CJ, I was like, "Hey, I know you're on JB's show, but do you mind coming on?" But JB, guys, I feel you guys check it out.
I want to bring JB in on just get his thoughts on this homeless thing. So
yeah, Rome here as well.
Rome. Is he in yet?
Yeah, I got it, man.
Hey, y'all! I can't stay for too long. I'm on the road. I just want to give y'all an update. I'm at the library right now. A shell of what it is. I just want to give everybody an update because I noticed I never took pictures. How do I turn this damn thing, man? I'm such a fucking boomer. Well, anyways, hold on. So this is the kitchen. Can y'all see that? My fucking floor is sinking in. But we're gonna fix that. We're fundraising for this right now. Everything in here got to get gutted. This is the kitchen, and this is the space I'm gonna have for the library. I get the stage. This little space over here. This space over here, we're gonna be having classes on how to teach Black people how to do their own taxes. But it's gonna be nice. It still need a lot of love and TLC, but we're gonna get it together. Hopefully, we'll be up by the summer. And I know it looked like a lot of work, but 2 weeks straight, we should have it done.
Okay.
Wow, cool. Rome, that looks awesome. Glad that you was able to get in and show us the inside because people are, we have the picture of you on the outside on the website, be nice to maybe cut this little clip so people can see
Yeah, I think
before and after, like what it looks like now, and then the work that you can do. And people don't know, like you can build a freaking house from scratch, from the ground up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
It's
it's work that you can do.
same ugly ass orange building. Same building. We're gonna get this shit moving pretty soon. But if y'all can donate, you know what I'm saying, so we can get this shit over with. I want to hold up my end of the bargain at least. So I have my spot solidified. Have our spot solidified. Like I said before, like, you know, I'm thankful for Ronnie because opportunities like this don't even come around. You will never hear nobody like, yeah, go ahead, you can have a spot in my fucking building as long as you know what I'm saying? Like, you help me fix it up, you can just have a spot. You ain't gotta pay rent, none of that crap. That's a blessing, you know. And I think we should take advantage of the situation, actually push socialism and bring socialism and communism back in Detroit without all that whitewashing, you know. What was that book that they always recite in the Black Book of Communism, whatever the fuck? But all right, that's all I really wanted, y'all.
great work.
All right,
always,
Rome. Everybody shouting you out in the comments, Rome. I know you can't see it right now, but everybody shouting you out in the comments. Good work. Anything, Savvy, JB, Nick, before he goes, you wanted to say anything before you?
Show
Great
support
work,
to
man.
Rome.
Good job, Rome.
Thank you.
Don't let people give you a defeatist attitude. This is why I got much love and admiration for Rome, because he is the one who spread the message that we is all we have, that we have the power. They want us to believe that politicians is the only way forward. How about we organize ourselves, build our own libraries, build our own communities, find our escape from this capitalist hellhole.
Yes.
So anyway, that's all I want to say, bro. I'm proud of you. Good work.
Thank you, man. That's fucking, it's heartwarming, man. Thank y'all, man. I'll be back on in probably like an hour or so. I gotta drive home. I gotta go make some
Are
food.
you joining us for
I'll
State
be
of
back
Union?
on.
Are you
You
joining
said
us for
what?
State of Union? We doing State of Union. Are you joining us for that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you got time. You got time for that because I'm gonna take a break myself.
Yeah.
All right. I'll see y'all on. I'll be back on. I'll see y'all.
Okay then.
All right.
Oh, one of us have to take them out. Yeah. So we were just having a conversation about homelessness, and I know this is an issue that is important, very important to you. You've said this many times that you've been homeless or unhoused yourself before, and it's in the context of Anna Casperia is in an interview with Ben Shapiro. It is framed as an interview of, you know, trying to come together and, you know, all the radical left and the radical right, you know, without them and trying to come together with something. But they seem to have the same position on homelessness. And I just wanted to get your take on what she says. So I'll rewind it maybe 45 seconds. Or maybe
Okay.
A little bit more. All right. So
It's been governed awfully. Forget about who's governing it.
Right.
The policies that have been used to govern it are just terrible. You have an increase in crime. Homelessness has taken over the streets. When I was living there, I mean, I've pretty famously talked about this. I mean, it was the kind of place where I had a very nice house in a pretty decent neighborhood, and we had a gate in the front. And we would open the gate, and there would be a homeless person face down in the gutter, Edgar Allan Poe style, or there would be a guy outside the house shooting heroin into his foot. And I've got like a 5-year-old. And this sort of stuff has become incredibly common in LA. You noticed it, and you've been getting all sorts of flack for it.
Right, because when there are problems in society, we need solutions. And you can't find solutions unless you acknowledge what the problem is and then properly diagnose it. So my biggest issue right now, at least with the way the left has handled the discussion on homelessness in places like Los Angeles, is there's this housing first mentality where, oh, everything would be fine as long as we put everyone in housing. And by the way, let me just note, housing is an important component to this. There is a housing crisis. There's a lack of inventory. I think we all know that. We do need to build more housing. But at the same time, treating the homeless population as if it's a monolith has been a complete failure. There is a huge mental health crisis happening in this country. So people with severe mental health issues are just left to die on the streets. And in some cases, you know, because they are experiencing an episode, they could carry out some sort of act of violence and assault someone. And it's a dangerous situation for everyone, okay? The people who are just trying to go about their day and the person who is left on the streets battling with this untreated mental health issue. There are people who are obviously struggling with
This is
drug
nothing new, by the way.
addiction.
This is classic homeless fear mongering. Like, oh my God, what if the homeless commits crime? What Anna's doing? She thinks she's being. I'll pass to you, Jay, because I know you want to chime in. But she thinks she's doing this intellectual lefty position. She's like, this is the position other people don't think about before. No, this is not new. Like the old school tactic of capitalists is to say that homeless. You notice how Ben Shapiro mentioned the guy shooting heroin in his foot. What about the homeless children? What about the homeless people that are working? So they demonize and say all homeless people are druggies because, once again, 40% of homeless people are black, so it's easier to get away with those ridiculous tropes. But I can round this all day. Go ahead, JB. I want to get your take.
Okay, so they talk about the homeless guy shooting heroin in his foot. What about the rich guy that's snorting cocaine in his mansion? Oh, we don't want to talk about that because he's rich, right? Right? But we're concerned about the homeless guy shooting heroin in his foot. And here's the funny part a lot of people don't realize. Some people that are homeless don't get into drugs until they're homeless because they're trying to dull the pain because they actually are homeless. Some people don't get certain mental illnesses until they become homeless because that's what leads up into it. And then they start to have to deal with all the troubles of being homeless. So the saying of just give people homes, homeless people aren't a monolith. No, but humans need housing. They are human. See, this is the problem. Somebody like Anna Kasparian is basically making it out to sound like homeless people are human. All humans need housing, right? Hell, you can go out camping, and what do you see? Tents. Tents is a temporary housing. Even if you're just doing it for fun and you're going out to camp, you still give yourself housing. Even if somebody finds themselves out in the woods somewhere, what do? They build shelter in order for it to keep them safe from the elements. What makes you think that's not going to be any different? That being said, when you give people housing, then it starts to make a base for them in order to get away from the substance abuse, to get away from the perils of mental illness. So this is why giving people housing, a housing first model, actually works. In fact, wasn't it Finland that did it? And it's extremely successful? And please don't give me that, well, do you have a more homogenous population that's more smaller? You can do it state by state if you want to do it that way, because the state of Florida is probably smaller than Finland, so you can do it state by state. But the point is that do you believe that people deserve housing as a human right? And if you don't, why don't you believe that? But the thing is, they don't want to answer that. Because then if you do that, then it goes, oh, well, I think we should put profits first. And then that makes them out to who they really are. But the problem is they don't want to answer that question. So they try to wiggle it in. With, oh, well, these people do drugs. Rich people do drugs.
It's also a tactic where they bring up homeless drug use. Despite the fact that they're not all drug users, even they do use drug, who care? For one, they got to cope with life. Secondly, they try to make being homeless out as being a personal failure. And in this context, oh my God, these druggies are the ones who don't deserve homes. These druggies are the ones who don't deserve passion. So that shifts the conversation away from the structural, the failure of our system. Look at a druggie shooting heroin in his foot. It's not the system that failed. If he wasn't a dumb druggie. That's the message that they are passively putting out there. But Anna want to call other people right wingers. She is repeating. When I listen to this clip, CJ, I hear this shit my entire life. This is not even new shit. It's lazy, rebranded anti-homeless propaganda. But go ahead if anyone else want to chime in.
Well, one more thing I just want to say is that a lot of times they don't want to go by the by the housing first model, because that means if everybody deserves housing intrinsically, then that means that the value of housing actually has to go down. And that's what it is, because they don't want their housing values to go down for the sacrifice of making sure that everyone is housed. And unfortunately, that's the mindset. It's more on profit instead of actually having the resource that everybody absolutely needs. That's housing.
I was gonna say too. I think Anna, they're in LA. I mean, it's not like some of these Hollywood executives and movie stars aren't doing drugs either at some of these Hollywood parties that they have. I don't even think it's about the drug issue. I think they just don't want to see homeless people. They don't want to walk past it. And I think that something that they need to remember to go back to is, why are people in that situation to begin with? California is one of the most expensive states to live in. A lot of people have been pushed out of their homes. I mean, it's not just California, though. I mean, Massachusetts, but even Austin, Texas has tent communities now. Like, a lot of people are just struggling to get by. So instead of blaming the people who are homeless, maybe you need to blame the system that's in place that has caused them to be in that situation. I did see that Los Angeles was trying to create like these sheds. This is like a new thing. They did this in Birmingham, Alabama as well. They've made these sheds for temporary housing for people who are homeless. And the idea is that they'll be there for a short time and then they'll transition into like their own permanent housing. But the transition for the most part hasn't been happening because the rent is too damn high. So this is a big part of the problem. Like, Mississippi found a solution to this problem. They said, we're just going to build more homes so that the homeless people have a place to live. That's
Hold on.
Just build the homes.
Hold on. Here's my problem. Okay. I love you when you say, not you, Sebi, but I'm saying to just generally out there. I love when people say, oh, we just need to build more affordable housing. No, the hell we don't. We have way more housing stock than we do homeless people. Even if you count the people who are sleeping on the couch, even if you count the people who are sleeping in motels, we have way more housing stock. You just need to put people in them. That's all that really needs to be done. But the problem is, y'all don't want to put people in them because you want to keep the profits from that housing. So you just want to take the people who are homeless or in need of housing and put them in a special place, out of sight, out of mind. When really, we don't need to build housing. We already have it. The problem is that it's the greed. And so when people talk about, oh, we just need to build affordable housing, plus affordable for who? That's the question. Affordable for who? Look, I'm going to tell you, what's the most affordable price for any human being is free. That's the most affordable price. But y'all don't want to hear that, because guess what? That means that you have to be at the same level, at least in some way, shape, or form, with people who you view as deplorable. That's what it is. It's a class issue, because there's some people, even who consider themselves middle class, who will look at the homeless and the poor as less than. And the thing is, here's the crazy part that people need to get through their minds. The homeless people are not better than you. They're not worse than you. And you're not better than them. And people need to get that through their heads.
But the other thing too, I think in reference to affordable housing, when you say affordable for who, there are affordable housing apartments in Boston that are $4,000 a month. It's means tested. So you have to fit into a certain income bracket. If you make too little, you can't get into affordable housing. If you make too much, you can't get into affordable housing. And if you make too little, then you can apply for public housing. But those places have like 5-year wait lists for people to get in. And a lot of the public housing have rules too. I've interviewed people in those housing complex where they can't, certain things they can't do, certain people can't come over. Like it's just absolutely ridiculous. So I think, you have to remember Anna Kasparian's dad aren't they in like real estate? So I think like this.
I didn't know that. If she is,
this is something I was told that they're in real estate. And I think if you go back to a lot of like these real estate developers going back to 2008 during the housing crisis, one of the biggest mistakes that the United States allowed to happen, they allowed people like BlackRock and Vanguard to come in and buy up those homes that were foreclosed on. They flipped the houses and they raised the price of the house. And that's another thing that led to gentrification. It's not just about professionals moving into the neighborhood. It's about the fact that you have companies like BlackRock that are buying up these homes in these communities, and they're making it unaffordable for the people who grew up in those communities. So you have to go all the way to the top to companies like BlackRock, which own so much in the world, not just the United States, but in the world. If you don't knock them down, this is going to continue to be a problem.
And as some of us are Marxists, some are socialists, communists, whatever, but we have to begin to use the housing issue and the homeless, unhoused issue to illustrate use value and exchange value. So, because this is a great way of getting people to understand socialism here. The reason what JB is saying, and I can take this down, we can put Anna up if you want to hear more, but the reason JB is saying there's enough houses, there's more than this is why what's keeping them out is exchange value, which we want to get rid of. Use value would mean those homes would go to the people who don't have homes. That's the use of the house is the value. The home is made for a specific living person. Exchange value is why the homes are sitting open. Oh, that home's not just for anybody. That's for me to make money. That home is not for the use of a person. I built that to make profit.
Yeah.
And that's why they're sitting open with people without homes. The other thing I wanted to interject. So I just wanted to make sure we use housing to illustrate exchange value versus use value, so that people, because that's the basic thing people will understand as far as housing. That's a very basic, and I just thought of this just now. Maybe somebody thought of it before, but that's very basic. That's something I could take to like my mom and start a conversation with her about socialism. Because that's a basic understand. Oh, home, wow, yeah, that it is always a lot of homes that just empty. And it's just empty because they need money for them instead of it being made for a person. But back to the Anna video, and I wanted to make a point. I think Sabby was alluding to this. But if housing first, so the issue is she doesn't want them to have a house first and then put them in a treatment center for mental health or drugs. She's saying put them in a shelter first, like the housing. I don't understand why her position is against being housing first. Like, what does anybody know what that position is? She's saying mental health people should go to mental health institutions and not get a house, and she's saying people who are addicted to drugs should go to drugs facilities. Like, what is this this stance that if anybody knows?
Because she doesn't feel that they deserve it yet. That's what it is. She doesn't feel they deserve it. Because if you do drugs, you don't deserve housing, even though there are billionaires and billionaires that do drugs and have housing. If you have a mental illness, you don't deserve housing. That's basically, look, I'm trying to be very sympathetic, but I'm sorry. To her take and Ben Shapiro's take, I cannot be sympathetic to that. Because as somebody that was unhoused, even as a child, it's like, it's crazy to me. Because now you're not just talking to the people who may have mental illness, who some of them got it because they're unhoused. You're also talking about to the LGBTQ youth that were kicked out of their housing that have to stay on the streets because their parents rejected them. You're also talking about the kids that aged out of the system and now they're poor and homeless because they aged out of the system. Or you're also talking about the people who have 40% are employed, but yet they just can't afford it. And then what if they start doing drugs because they have to cope with the system, like Nick said? So the thing is that you believe that they just don't deserve it, or they have to go through these hoops in order to do it. But the crazy part is they actually go through the hoops a lot quicker if they have housing, more permanent housing. But the thing is not registering because they don't believe they deserve it, which means that they think that some humans are more deserving of a right, of an intrinsic right than others, which is this whole better than you type of mentality. And that's the problem. And that's the issue with capitalism in itself.
The other thing too is that I know Ben Shapiro said in that video that he left California or something like that. Okay, that's fine,
Yeah.
but this is spreading. This problem is spreading. Like I said, Austin, Texas having the same issue. Dallas, Texas having the same issue. And CJ, I know you brought this up before. A lot of times these things start on the coast and then it moves inward. So we have the same problem on the East Coast with New York and Massachusetts. It starts here and then it kind of spreads because people will move further away from the expensive areas. But then once you start moving to those other towns and those other states, guess what? The rent in those areas will start to increase too. Look at like places like Florida, which used to be like if you're retiring, that used to be a haven for you to move to Florida because you don't have to worry about the taxes and everything. Now Florida is getting expensive. Same thing with places like Raleigh, North Carolina, because so many people left these expensive states and moved to those areas. Now those areas are becoming expensive. That's the problem that Ben Shapiro doesn't seem to understand. Just because you left California, that doesn't solve the problem. The problem is going to follow you because it continues to spread.
And these right wingers, they ignore the massive poverty problem that is going on, not only throughout the entire country, but in red states in particular as well. You had a UN rapporteur who did a tour of Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and he said the conditions that they are living in are worse than what they consider to be a third world country. He explained how many of them didn't have basic infrastructure like clean water. Many of them didn't have high-tech internet. And I don't live in a fancy area. I live in the Midwest. I live in a poor area of southern Kansas City. But I went to South Carolina when I was canvassing for Bernie, and I was in some rural areas, and I was shocked and appalled as someone who is not well-traveled. I'm not a well-traveled guy. So I went to South Carolina. I could not believe that my people was living like this because I was in these black neighborhoods, communities, no clean water, no cable. A lot of these people, I explained this when I was doing my reporting on the ground, had no idea who Bernie Sanders was because they didn't have cable news. They have internet. They living might as well be in the 1800s. But then people like Ben Shapiro, like, oh my God, look at these blue states. That's red, blue tribalism shit. Capitalism has failed whether it's red or blue, period. But I'll pass it to you guys and we can move on to the next topic. Let's have anything else.
I can do a couple of announcements and then Sabby has her has her topic.
This is fire because whenever I see this, is like the merging of the Nick and CJ show, then the Sabby and JV show is like a special. Nick and JV, Nick, JV, Sabby, man, this is dope. This is dope. But anyway,
yeah.
Wonder Twins activate.
Sabby and JV on top, Nick and CJ at the bottom. Like it's the super show, I think.
I have a philosophical question as an intermission sort of question before we get to Sabby's topic, and we can start with Sabby. Do you see a realignment happening? We have sort of what they would call the far left who are saying, hey, we need to reach out to Trump people, conservative people, and do more teaming up, worker kind of thing. And they call that red-brown alliance. But it seems to me, and the Yang Forward Party is illustrating this, along with Ro Khanna's willingness to vote for a Republican speaker. And now you're seeing this with Ben Shapiro and Anna Kasparian. It's like a realigning in the middle, too, where they're saying, hey, we are now NATO left, so we're down with a little bit of war. You're down with some nuclear energy for a little bit of climate change fix. Let's kind of, in the center, kind of realign. Have you noticed that, or do you have the sort of same assessment? I have that question for everybody to get me ready.
Anything to pull you away from the left. Anything to pull you away from the left. But also, I think some of it is for views. And this is a part of, like, let's be real, Anna trying to expand her audience as well. Could be same thing with Ben Shapiro, although his audience pretty big too. But I think that's a big part of it. But it don't make no sense to me, CJ, because again, like, why is it okay for Anna Kasparian to have a sit-down conversation with Ben Shapiro, but it's not okay for Jimmy Dore to talk to Tucker Carlson? And by the way, it's not just Jimmy Dore that's gone on Tucker Carlson. Cornel West has also gone on Tucker Carlson's show, but you never hear people complain about that. They only complain about it when it's Jimmy Dore that goes on there.
And Nomiki Konst too.
Yep.
Yeah, he goes on there a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Blatantly hypocritical. Blatantly hypocritical.
All right, let's like the video. Sabby has a topic coming up in just a second. We have 400 people watching, 283 likes. Can we do another 100? Can another 100 people hit that like button? We have a pretty big goal of RBN to 50K. Thank you for those that help us reach to 30,000. I think we're at like 30,700 or something like that now. Also, join our Substack if you want notifications when we go live. Like you would have gotten a notification about our State of the Union live stream that'll be tonight. That's out of the ordinary. You will get notifications for that, and also clips. You also get the added bonus of the Discord link if you join our Substack. And then scrolling there at the bottom is our Patreon. If you're able to support us financially every month, $2 a month, $3 a month, whatever you can afford, that is the best way to do it. And you also get the Discord link that way. And then the last two things before I pass it to you, Sabby, this is our website. You can get all of our links on our personal pages. You can check out our chapter information, our launch, and other items like our story on our website. And the last thing is this is our email. If you don't have our new email, stop using the Gmail and use our new one. For those listening, info@revblacknetwork.com. And I'll pass it to you, Sabby.
So we saw a lot happen with the rail workers about Congress breaking their strike, right? Well, it's not just the rail workers. And this is something I've been trying to warn people about, that because we were having so many like worker strikes, that eventually it was going to get to the point where some of these states were going to try to make it illegal for certain professions to strike. And so in Massachusetts, we are one of those states. I think Florida is one too, where it's illegal for teachers to go on strike. But recently, teachers in Woburn, Massachusetts decided to go on strike anyway. So they did what you would call the wildcat strike, and they get fined. So the union gets fined thousands of dollars each day, basically, that they're on strike. So they reached an agreement. But it brought up this question. And now this is Governor Healy. Now she's our new governor as of this year, actually. And she was supposed to be different. And I tried to warn people about her, because people were like, oh, we have a Democrat governor again, things are going to be so much better. And I tried to tell people that Maura Healey is just as corporate. So this came out recently, and it says that Governor Healey is against legalizing teacher strikes. And she said that kids have been through enough.
The kids.
This is someone, I can't play the video because of copyright, but this is someone who she ran on, creating change and obviously also identity politics. They pushed that heavily with her. They said this will be our first LGBTQ woman to be governor of the state.
Oh
so
my God.
That was something that was heavy.
Now we get a woman that can break strikes. Slay queen, break that strike, queen.
Yeah.
Is that hit you differently, JB, because she's part of the LGBTQ? I noticed you had a severe reaction when Savvy said she's part of the LGBTQ, because I know I'm offended when Black identity politics are kind of used. Does that offend you, JB?
Yes, CJ. Yes, it offends me. It offends the hell out of me, because they're literally using a disenfranchised community in order to disenfranchise other people, and that pisses me off.
Yeah. So this is what happened. So because that strike just happened recently, it brought up the question, now that we have a new governor, can we reverse it and make it so that it's not illegal for teachers to go on strike here? So it said teacher strikes are illegal in Massachusetts and 37 other states, but the Massachusetts Teacher Association plans to file legislation soon that would allow strikes. So WBZ TV's John Keller, he interviewed Governor Maura Healey and asked her if she thought it was a good idea. And this is what she said: I don't. I've come to this, John, as the proud daughter of educators. I think we should be doing everything we can to support our educators, particularly in this time and what so many have been through with the pandemic. a lot of strain on our educators, also a lot of strain on our kids and families. Every day when I see kids out of school because of a strike, my heart just breaks because kids have been through enough in terms of learning, loss, and the like. But let me tell you why some of the teachers went on strike. They didn't want to pay these people. Like, some of these teachers had wages that were owed to them for over a year ago, back wages that weren't paid, raises that they didn't get that weren't implemented, that were supposed to be implemented in August. Some of them have been working without a contract since August, and they didn't want to pay these people. So it's just, they had no choice but to go on strike. But she doesn't want to reverse that. She still wants to keep it so that it's illegal for teachers to go on strike. And I think that's ridiculous.
And what does that literally mean, Savvy, since you're in a state that where it is illegal? So I heard you say fines. Like what? So like what happens? What could a teacher get arrested also? Like what happens when they go on strike, when they say it's illegal to go on strike?
They don't arrest them, but they fine the union like thousands of dollars each day that they're on strike. And this is where like the mayor is supposed to step in, whichever like district is, the mayor is supposed to step in. And then because this has happened twice this year already, that's why they're deferring to the governor and saying, don't you think you might need to change something here because this is happening? But it's not just the teachers in Woburn. Also, Boston Public School teachers, they're another one. They came out a couple of weeks ago and said they're owed back wages going back like 2 years ago. And nobody has paid these people. And they're just like, every time we ask about it, they come up with excuses. Now the excuse is the technology isn't working well. So they said they don't know how long it's going to take to get them the wages that they're owed. And also because the backlog is so long, they said it would take hours of manpower to figure out who is owed what based on the degrees that they have in the years of service. This is just ridiculous. People have to understand we were shut down during the height of the pandemic as a state, and we were shut down for a while. They still made the teachers come to school to teach at an empty classroom while the kids were at home learning remotely. And a lot of the kids that live in impoverished communities, they struggled and did worse academically during that time because of the fact that not everybody has a household where they can have a room to theirself and not have a brother or sister that shares that room with them, where they have a quiet space that they can go to in their own laptop for 8 hours a day. They didn't think about that. They didn't think about those kids. So it's just, to me, it didn't make any sense to me. It didn't make any sense. They said that they feel like the teachers are being selfish. But the point that I want to drive home is that this is just the beginning, because the Supreme Court is already in talks right now about making it illegal for certain industries to go on strike in this country because of what happened last year. So this is why I say we have to have a general strike. At this point, it's just they're going to try to do everything that they can to prevent giving workers their rights. And so I would highly recommend that people check out Shama Sawant's new organization, Workers Strike Back, and sign up for that and get involved with that, because this whole thing of like voting for president and congressman and stuff, that's not changing anything.
Are you telling me that Marianne Williamson won't solve this problem?
No, she ain't going to solve it. No, see, this is a state thing. This is a state. It's in 37 other states. It's illegal for teachers to go on strike.
So
that just
go
ahead, Nick. I know you. I know you.
I'll let JB go first. I'll let JB go first.
Well, okay. So saying that you don't want the teachers to go on strike because for the children, that's like saying that this antiviral that needs to be injected, you don't want the kid to get injected with the you don't want a person to get injected by this antiviral because you don't want them to get stuck with the needle. But even though they're dying from the virus. And so it's like, wait a minute. So you don't want me to stick the needle for the antiviral that will save the person's life. So you rather just let the person die instead of getting that injection. That's basically what it is. Because if you want the kids to get taught, you need to pay the teachers a livable wage in order for them to teach the children. So if they go on strike in order to get that livable wage, well, you need to break some eggs to make an omelet So scramble that motherfucker. Like, what? Are you kidding me right now? So this. Go ahead, dog.
It's mind-boggling. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. We can't let the kids go through this anymore. So we gotta continue to pay the teachers like crap. Like, if you actually care about the kids, why not just pay them double? Apparently, their value is so high that their wages don't match their value. I thought you told us that the reason why McDonald's workers don't make that much money is because they don't bring value. You just admitted that these people are so valuable that you're willing to take away their democratic right to go on strike. Do you guys understand why I'm Marxist with a capital M? I don't dance around and sugarcoat this shit like a lot of people who are afraid to lose viewership do. A lot of people who are afraid, I don't want to scare the right wingers off. No, I am a Marxist with a capital M because capitalism is the highest form of authoritarianism. You guys understand? Yes. Capitalism is the highest form of authoritarianism. You was told growing up, I was told growing up that communism was authoritarianism. You know, the dictatorship of the proletariat, where we own the means of production to the point where there's no need of a capitalist state anymore. That's the authoritarian ideology. Meanwhile, under the capitalist ideology, you have the people who have capital, who own the means of production, who have the power to shut down your ability to strike. They can shut down your ability to strike. How is that not the highest form of authoritarianism? It's under our capitalist state, where the largest police state that ever existed, the United States prison industrial complex that imprisons 1/4 of the world's prison population, it exists in capitalist America, not in China. China has 1.1 billion people, 3 times more than we do. Jail less people than we do. You don't see them breaking up these kind of strikes. In fact, the West making fun of China because they came to the demands of the protesters. How dare China be democratic? So the only reason I got interested in doing this is to get more people to become anti-capitalist, to understand that this system is right into their core. Joe Biden, Marianne Williamson, none of these capitalists are going to change this system that is right on the core level unless we have a Marxist framework that is based on that struggle. We are not getting anywhere. That's my last thought, CJ. Go ahead.
No, I was going to bring up this comment because it felt like it alludes to sort of what we think about this here, which is striking is not a right. It's a power. Workers' power. Power is taken. Because I didn't understand that there was even a concept that strikes can be illegal till like 7 years ago. I didn't even understand. Because I don't understand. What do you mean? It's illegal. Like, if I'm gonna strike, I'm just gonna walk out this motherfucking door right here. What are you gonna do? Like, what mechanism is gonna stop me from going on strike? And it just sounds like there's a fine, but there are some states I hear that you can get arrested. Maybe there's some industries you can get arrested, like the railroad industry. Go ahead, Nick, if you were gonna.
Yeah, the only thing I want to add, because I didn't want to cut you off, is most people think they're capitalists. You're not a capitalist. You're an exploited worker. Unless you own capital, unless you're an investor, unless you're part of the managerial class, you're not a capitalist. You are an exploited worker. You guys understand? And most people have no idea the power that capitalists wield. That's why my comment I wanted to reply when he said, I didn't even know they can break strikes. Most people don't. This is what I learned recently too. People always hear this stuff. I didn't know they can break the railroad strike. Yeah, most people have no idea how much power capitalists are given under this central planning model. Our democracy does not exist. That's almost I misspoke there. We don't live in a democracy. You can predict every single election at a 97% rate based on who raises the most money. Is that a democracy? That's a capitalist dictatorship. The police work for the capitalists. But that's why you did a segment just now, CJ. You got Stephen A. Smith, Sean Handy, dapping. Because the power that they wield, they are part of a fraternity. And my only goal in this fucking life, and the only reason I have a platform, is to get people to understand that. Not red, blue. Not none of this culture war shit. It is literally class, the people on top that has nothing but disdain, class disdain. And this is my response to when you brought this up, Sabby, when they forced teachers to go in. That's literally just class disdain. And you guys know there's plenty of examples of this where they just force. They almost like they just showing hateful disdain towards the workers, like a power flex. And we need to have that same mentality against the ruling class.
And they force them back.
Go ahead, TJ.
They force them back with no resolution of their concern. Yeah. It's like rail workers. The law says go back, and it's okay. And what are we gonna do about what we said? Nothing. We're literally gonna do nothing's gonna happen to these teachers. Like no, they're not gonna be paid more. These teachers, they're just nothing's gonna happen. You can't just think about that. I just take a second to think. You're not getting paid enough. And the law says you have to just keep going to work, not getting paid enough.
They don't want you. It's gotten to the point where, and I want to play this clip really quick from Second Thought, because Nick, when you brought up democracy, this is something I talked about recently about social democracy. And Second Thought brought up this, and he said social democracy actually isn't good enough. And I didn't think about this before.
Yeah, I saw that video. It's a good video.
Yeah, I'm just going to play this part right here because he explains why even like the whole like social Dems and like, you know, free college and Medicare for all, he explains why that is not good enough. And it has to deal with capitalism.
Yeah, this is a great video.
Guy richer. For an ideology with democracy in the name, social democracy notably fails to provide democracy in the place where you spend most of your waking hours. High unionization and tripartite negotiations between the state, capitalists, and labor make that better than under a pure laissez-faire approach, but they still only balance the scales between the one guy at the top of the company and the 99 people who work there. They don't actually account for the number of people on each side the way a democracy would. They only make sure that the one guy doesn't go too far and still gets most of the money. And regardless, people in any capitalist society are bound to the profit motive. So the decisions workers make in this marginally better situation, even if they had full democratic agency, still need to produce a profit for their company and their economy. So the typical capitalist race to the bottom still applies, as everyone tries to outcompete for higher profit margins. But that's domestically, where workers' exploitation is relatively low and compensated for by a good safety net and universal amenities. Salaries in social democracies are high and public services are great. The problem with social democracy is that in order for capitalists to make good profits under this arrangement, where they pay their workers slightly better and don't get to hoard as much, somebody somewhere needs to be exploited a lot more. And that's where the global south comes in.
There it is.
That piece is very important, I think, because even when we look at countries like Germany and Denmark that have like some of these like social democracies, it's still under capitalism. So even though they may not be exploiting the people in their country, they're exploiting someone somewhere else. And a lot of times it ends up being like the global south. So this is why like we have to push back against like the social Dems when they make these statements like we just need Medicare for all and that's or we just need universal college. And that's not enough.
And they benefit from the evils of capitalism and disaster capitalism. People like Marianne Williamson, what they don't bring up the fact that Sweden was one of the largest arms dealers to Yemen.
Yep.
It was one of the largest sponsors of the genocide in Yemen. So even though they have social democracy, they benefit and build their companies through weapon sales and other illicit means that through a Marxist approach and through communism, we want to eliminate that kind of stuff. But a great example and great video. That's a great video. You guys should check it out. I saw that video earlier. It's a good one. Go ahead, CJ. I know you want to chime in.
JB, I think he wanted to chime in. Go ahead.
Yeah. So these teachers are basically being forced to work. What do you call when someone is forced to work against their will? What do we call it? Come on, class. You guys know the word.
Is it indentured servitude, or is it ugly word? That ugly word.
That ugly word.
but they're not whipped, JB. They're not getting whipped though. Who cares if they force a little labor out of them?
Look, I said this before. If you're working under, remember this word, duress. Duress. That means you're being forced. And what does duress mean? I will show you, because I showed it to you guys on Sunday on the JB show. Some of y'all weren't live. Some of y'all weren't tuning in to the show. That's okay. I'm going to show you right now. These people are being put under the word duress. What does duress mean? Duress means threats, violence, constraints, or other action brought to bear on someone to do something against their will or better judgment. It is synonymous with the words coercion, compulsion, force, pressure, and intimidation. So, guess what? Wouldn't you say that slaves, chattel slaves, were under duress to work because they were under coercion, compulsion, force, pressure, intimidation by the whip? Well, what can also be a figurative whip? Can't homelessness, hunger, and having no health care also be a whip?
Yes, JB.
Absolutely. So guess what? Then that means that these teachers, these workers, are working under duress. They're under the coercion, compulsion, force, pressure, and intimidation of being unhoused, having no health care, or also not having food, so that they keep teaching in order without a sufficient wage in order to work for the state. So it is forced labor. Forced labor is slavery. Have you subscribed to RBN? Have you liked the stream? Because this is the type of stuff that we talk about. And this is why CJ's smile of approval will be upon you if you do that. But
this is
but
why you should be joining
about,
the JB channel. This is the type of analysis you're gonna get broken down, and you're gonna get some freaking spot on analogies. This is why you gotta join.
And that what happens. I'll tell you, you guys saw what happened when you have no Marxist analysis. JB show you what happened when you do have Marxist analysis. And he does a lot of theory reading on there as well. Make sure you guys support JB. Great analysis. If you guys have anything else you want to chime in on the story, feel free. I have a short story.
I was just gonna say,
Go ahead, Abby.
really quick. This is why, like, a lot of these companies have gotten to this place where they want the employees to just kind of come in, put their head down, don't complain, don't say anything. And if you do, it's like they want you to feel lucky to even have a job. And that's kind of what it's come to in this country. So
yeah,
duress is the only way they can get people back to take these low wage jobs. So duress is a very important component to capitalism, to maintaining its control, to low wage is duress. Is that you see homeless people? That's duress.
Yes.
You see wages going up. You see rent prices going up. Oh, you got to work an extra part-time job. That's duress. You see all these layoffs from Amazon and that's all. This is all duress. They do it, and capitalists do it. They don't have to have a plan. What do you mean they're in the back? No, the plan is capitalism and sustaining that. So they just all operate in a way to keep capitalism moving forward, or to produce it in a way that they are extracting the wealth. And it's not how come all of a sudden all these people need to be laid off unless they're capitalists or trying to forcibly do something to the economic system. Go ahead, JB.
Why? To your point, CJ, which is such a great point with how capitalists exploit duress. Why do you guys think capitalists are so deathly afraid of single payer healthcare or NHS system? Because there's studies that show that single payer will save money, increase the quality of life. So they have no argument in terms of the fiscal argument or the health argument. It does not matter. The only thing they care about is control. If you give people health care, now you don't have to work that job because of health care. Now you got more flexibility in what jobs you can choose. Like, damn, I really wish I could do that job I love, but that job doesn't offer as good health care as this corporate soul draining piece of shit job I have. So it's about dirty control. So that's a great point, and that connects with duress. They want you to work with the duress of the threat of healthcare over your head. So great points all around. Any last thoughts on this? I have literally just a short discussion story that I just want to get Sabby in on.
Sabby, how are you on time, Sabby? You got enough time for another segment?
Yeah, I'm good till 5:30.
Yeah, same.
Oh, right on. Okay, cool. All right, so go ahead.
I want to do this while we have everyone here because it's not a long this is a discussion-based conversation, which illustrates how deeply unserious the people who still advocating for forcing a primary in 2024 and RBN, I have zero tolerance for it anymore. Zero tolerance. You guys, we just saw how teachers are being fined. Imagine we had the funds to create a strike fund that can take care of those kinds of things. Instead of having funds set aside for a strike fund, people want to siphon money to Marianne Williamson 2024. People want to siphon funds because they expect a random superhero is going to save them. There are people who do not want to do the work, so they want a superhero to save them. The tranquilizing drug of electoral politics is what these people are falling for. And now the reason why I'm covering this story, because if you push these people, they will admit, like, yeah, I don't think these people really stand. I don't think Marianne Williamson stand a chance, but I think it's important to get our message out there. The message that has the end goal of what? A sheep herding people to the Democratic Party. So if you know you have no chance to win, wouldn't it be better to run a messaging campaign based on exiting the two-party duopoly, which is ran by war criminals and corrupt oligarchs? So I'm the reason I'm bringing this up is because we all know that Marianne Williamson don't stand a chance. The illusion of forcing a primary in 2024 is an attempt by the professional managerial class to siphon money from the working class to the burning media industrial complex. That I don't give these people benefit down anymore. That's literally what it is. They want to take your money so they can make money on the Bernie campaign like David Schroeder did. They want to be able to cover the Bernie campaign, like make a lot of subscriptions doing that. Because despite having no chance. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I want to give you guys thoughts on this. Biden and the DNC were just successful in moving South Carolina up as number one on the primary schedule. So let's break this down. Bernie Sanders, one of the most popular progressive politicians of all time, got demolished in South Carolina with massive momentum coming in. He won the first three primary states, demolished Nevada, and then South Carolina with the roadblock because they had the dark money strategy. So Bernie couldn't beat that, but Marianne Williamson, the orb lady, is going to walk in and challenge Joe Biden and defeat him in South Carolina, the first primary state. That is what Crystal Ball and Kyle Kulinski are trying to sell people. So I'm going to read the headline because this is why I'm covering this. I'm going to give you guys thoughts on this. Biden is wielding the DNC's power to crush potential primary challenges in 2024.
Yep. Because he already knew what was coming. But listen, so it doesn't even matter if Marianne has support in New Hampshire. That's not it. It doesn't matter if she has support in Iowa. The first state is now South Carolina. Yep. And having lived in South Carolina, I can tell you the Democrat, especially the African-American Democrat voters in South Carolina, are conservative Democrats. So what does that tell you? Jim Clyburn is going to come in again and he's going to say, vote for Joe Biden, and they all going to fall in line and vote for Joe Biden. So this time around, Joe Biden is going to start out strong in the primary, not like last time where Bernie started out strong and then Joe Biden came in. There's a reason why. They're saying on MSNBC, they interviewed two African Americans, and they said this is great because this is more diversity. So the diverse state is going first. I'm like, no, the red state, a red state is going first. They're putting South Carolina first because that's the state that changed the game for Joe Biden in 2020. If it was about diversity, why not put the state of Maryland first? Maryland has more Black people than South Carolina does. Why not put them first? Why not put a state like California first if you're really thinking about diversity and people of color and all those things? Why wouldn't you put a blue state first? Why you put a red state first that Joe Biden is not going to win in the general election because that's the state that changed the race? They're already playing games. This is what we were talking about before. Nick, they can change the rules anytime.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we keep telling them the game is rigged. We're telling them, and they still want to do the same strategy. That's why I told you I give them no benefit of doubt. They were trying to siphon money to the Bernie media industrial complex because all of them know she stands no chance. Yeah. So, and JB, go ahead. I want you to chime in. And I'll make my other point later.
Well, in regards to any primary challenger, Marianne Williamson, there's a song that really signifies how it's going to go. It goes like this. In the end, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't. Because guess what? Just like all the points that you guys made, in the end, guess what's going to happen? She's going to lose. And then she's going to say, this insert Republican here is too dangerous. We need you guys to vote for Joe Biden.
Yes.
And then that's what's going to happen. That's it.
That's the end goal. That's the only reason they're doing this. Just so they can keep her back to the Democratic Party.
The poll wasn't looking good. The poll wasn't looking good. I did a poll for Marianne and a poll for Nina Turner. And like Nina Turner had more support, way more support than Marianne Williamson did. But the support for Nina Turner was only if she ran as a third party candidate. But the majority of people said no, regardless if she ran as a Dem or third party. Same for Marianne Williamson. Most of the people said no, regardless if she runs third party or as a Democrat.
That's why me and CJ, when we did our analysis of this, we called out the Birdie Industrial Complex for manufacturing consent around Marianne Williamson, because they were just saying stuff like, Marianne Williamson is the heir apparent to the Bernie throne. Man, she got a good chance against Joe Biden. And I'm like, where's the poll? Because the only poll I've seen show Pete Buttigieg number one. To be clear, I don't put any stocks in these polls this early out. But the thing is, if you're going to say that, have some sort of physical evidence. They were just saying it. No polls showing Marianne ahead. No one on corporate media is talking about her. In fact, I already saw a few hit pieces on her already. So they literally came on their shows like, hey, guys, doesn't Marianne Williamson sound good? Marianne Williamson sounds good. Wink, wink, nod, nod to the audience. And then the audience like, yeah, I guess Marianne Williamson does sound good. And then they're like, oh, my God, everyone talking about Marianne Williamson. Like, no, it's only you guys. It's only Marianne Williamson and her friends. And then my last thought, and I want to pass to you guys after this, because now let's think about this strategically. Something that the dumb left, the real dumb left, the NATO left will never do. Think about this. You're challenging the sitting president. They already confirmed that he's running again in 2024, right? So what is your only path to victory? So for one, you're already going to get a lot of criticism, like I already seen Marianne Williamson got in mainstream media, for challenging the sitting president, because they're going to assume that you are making them weaker, right? So what Biden did was massively corrupt. So he put South Carolina up front. So the best thing that you could do if you're challenging the president in a primary, you need to get a giant victory immediately to show the president is weak and show that you are the strong candidate heading to the general election. If you get wiped out the first election, everyone will say, oh my God, you're just weakening the president. You're staying in the primary longer than you should. Just drop out, allow the general election to play out. So Marianne Williamson is going to run against Biden, and then she'll get destroyed in South Carolina. And then they're going to say, why are you even running this election? You see how bad you got destroyed in South Carolina? Then Marianne Williamson, like, good point, time to drop out of the race. Then they're going to endorse Joe Biden, Democratic candidate. And now we back to the same spot we was 4 years ago, 8 years ago. You guys see how we can see this coming? They want to do the same thing again. The same thing again. Go ahead, JB.
But even the independent, sorry, JB, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask a question. Who would even in their right mind endorse against a sitting president of the same party?
It's literally
Bernie Sanders isn't gonna. You think even though Marianne offered her support for Bernie Sanders, you think Bernie Sanders is gonna support Marianne Williamson? No, he's gonna back Joe Biden.
No, fucking won't.
Based on what I've seen, it just doesn't look good. Even I interviewed John Stasevich, who's also running for president as an independent, but he told me on Friday, he told me he don't want to fight. And I said, what are you talking about? You have to be willing to go in the ring and take the gloves off, and you have to really destroy Joe Biden. He said he ain't trying to fight. He said he trying to have conversations with people. He don't want to debate. And I said, no. See, we can't have another Bernie Sanders who says Joe Biden is my friend. We don't need that. We need someone that's going to go in and fight. But to tell me you don't want to fight, I was like, nah, but I ain't trying. No.
Yeah, and my last point on this segment, I'll let you guys wrap it up based on your final thoughts. Remember the question I asked Marianne Williamson, the one I led with? It took her 10 minutes to answer. Well, I said, based on the failure of the Bernie movement to accomplish material wins for the working class. In fact, they are active PR agents of the Biden administration. Why should the working class invest in your campaign and do the same thing again? She dodged it the first time. Then she eventually circled back and said, if you feel the way that I feel, you should not vote for me. She said you should not vote for her if you feel like the working class should be smarter with their resources. Because the question was, why should people donate to you? She knows it's a waste of resources. That's why I said the Bernie Media Industrial Complex is a grift. This is a ploy by Marianne Williamson to get your money to pay her staffers, to elevate her public profile so she can get a book deal later. That's why it's not in her interest. That's why I asked that question first. It is not in her interest as a politician to tell people not to donate to her. That's a horrible move as a politician.
Yeah.
Of course you don't. Of course you're not going to say this because she's a grifter. People who are running through the Democratic Party are grifters. They will never tell you to be smart with your money. What do we do? I tell you all the time, donate to our Rome. I tell you guys, donate to JB, donate to mutual aid. Yep. And if you're a cloud trader with a little extra, you can drop something to Patreon. I always tell you guys donate to other places, but Marianne Williamson will never tell you that. They will never tell you that because it's in their interest for you to donate to them. This is the conversation that Marianne Williamson's friends will never have with her because it's uncomfortable. We're supposed to give these people the benefit of the doubt that they're not corrupted, and even if it's a smaller way than Joe Manchin, who gives a shit? It's still you misleading workers based on monetary pursuits. That's it. That's literally what the definition of a grifter is. But that's my final thoughts on the segment. You guys can round it out with any last thoughts. Go ahead, Sabby.
Where was all this support and passion for Marianne when she ran in 2020?
Everyone used to make fun of her back then.
People were making fun of her. I understand, a lot of the power was behind, like, people were behind Bernie and stuff like that, but they were making fun of her. Like, she still has some of the same opinions. So it's just weird to me. Fact that they think she could do better than Bernie Sanders. Are you kidding me? Bernie Sanders had over 10,000 people here. 10,000 people here in Boston. Give me a break. There's no way.
No way.
Yeah. In Queensbridge Park, Bernie had over 25,000 in New York.
People think she's gonna be Biden in South Carolina, though. She gonna make that. Dude, that first primary gonna hit. She's gonna get washed in epic proportions, and then no one's gonna take her candidacy seriously anymore. It's over from day one because the Democrats, as I explained before, adjusted to the Justice Democrat strategy, the DSA strategy, but they refused to adjust. They refused to change because it made a lot of these people career. RBN is post Bernie Sanders. We don't need this shit. We don't need the illusion of working within the Democratic Party. The Justice Democrats, TYT, and all the elected officials, their career, their monetary status depends on it. That is the Bernie Media Industrial Complex that people like Cal Kalinske and Crystal Ball will never call out because they're friends with these people, and that stings too much.
I will say anybody thinking about starting like a channel now, because we've been doing this for like 2 years now. Anyone who's thinking about starting it now, do not build your channel or your show around a campaign, a politician. No. Don't do it. Because we saw so many people do that, right? And now it's just like,
Now they just DNC apologizers now. They don't even try to be leftists anymore. They're like, fuck, Bernie sold out, I will follow him.
Yeah. And we want our money back.
But going back to the schedule, so we have progressive Democrats, because I've seen this topic and I just haven't covered it, but we have progressive Democrats all the way from Crystal Ball to, I think I've seen on the Majority Report, I've seen on TYT, even maybe on the Alex Wagner show, where it's the perception that progressive Democrats view this change in schedule is directly, squarely targeting them, sort of like dark money. Like they want to make sure to keep them out. I don't know how many things, like the Democrats putting fences over, they setting grenades and traps, and you still trying to sneak into this shit. Like,
hey, they voted for Hakeem Jeffries.
Exactly.
The idea of taking over the Democratic Party is dead. At arrival, at Hakeem Jeffries. Because how do you think he's gonna spend those resources? He'll spend those resources to crush you guys. You think this DNC moving this primary to South Carolina is the he just getting started, boy. He just getting started.
I don't see how they're gonna fight this though. I don't see how they can. What fight do you have for this? Because you can't fight against identity politics in this day and age.
They can't even fight against it because people like Jamal Bowman and AOC are apologizing for Hakeem Jeffries. Right. So there's not even a fight to have. AOC, Jamal Bowman, those people won, and then they pulled the ladder up from their own professional managerial class because there are a lot of AOC people who wanted to be AOCs. But then AOC like, hell no, nigga, I got this job. Pull the ladder up, side with Hakeem Jeffries, and now nobody's gonna get elected again.
Well, not only that too, but if you look at you're talking about AOC like pulling the ladder up and stuff like that. Yeah. Ro Khanna just voted to denounce socialism. This is over, you guys.
Yo, okay, Nick, you're a little bit on the younger side, but you and Savvy are on the little younger side. But CJ, my brother, remember Merry Melodies? Remember Looney Tunes? Right?
Yes.
Look, the Democratic Party, whenever anybody's progressive, they're taking that Acme TNT and they're blowing their shit up. That's what they're doing. And next thing you know, they end up looking like Wild E. Coyote with an anvil on top of his head. And this is exactly what happens. And then guess what? Who supplied Wild E. Coyote with the money to buy whatever it was? Guess what? It was you. It was you. And guess what? That money is gone with the wind. It's gone. And guess what? You ain't getting it back. And so that's the problem. And we're literally telling you, stop burning the money. If you're going to give it away, then give it away to mutual aid or somebody that's going to be more deserving, like somebody that needs some diapers or somebody that needs some homes. Don't be giving it to people who... Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, my bad. I have another point I literally forgot. I wanted to bring up that segment because it's like the strategy difference that we are advocating for. So and I should have said this at the end of the last segment, but you have Marianne Williamson, Crystal Ball, and Kyle Kulinski, their faction, their argument is it's more effective to run the Democratic Party to get your messaging out. Who was on the ballot in November? The Green Party, Howie Hawkins. Jill Stein was campaigning all the way to November when she was on the ballot. So when you run this strategy, you are going to be forced out and made into irrelevance after South Carolina. With a third party, if you're a third party candidate, you immediately start out adversarial, which will draw in other independent-minded people. And you don't stop campaigning after the first South Carolina primary. So as the primary and the bullshit red-blue game is going on, you have your campaign going until November. Your movement building until November. Compared to the alternative, we have Marianne Williamson and these people running the Democratic Party, and then they endorse the primary winner after the election is over. So now you just completely have all these months where you just being DNC's apologists because you campaigning for Joe because you signed a contract. Remember that why Tosi endorsed Joe Biden even though she went full Republican because she signed that goddamn contract. So instead of signing that contract and endorsing Joe Biden later, spend the entire election cycle organizing a third party, a worker movement, do mutual aid events during this time instead of DNC events. Their strategy makes zero sense in terms of advancing the working class. Sorry, I interjected that last point late. I just want to make it. I'll pass.
We haven't won any progressive policies on the national level. We had 7 Democrats shoot down $15 minimum wage. 7 Democrats, 1 independent. Of course, we knew the Republicans were going to be against it. But again, that it passed in the House and you had 7 Democrats shoot down a $15 minimum wage. None of these things have passed on the national level. They've been passing through the states, but not on the national. That's why I don't understand. I'm just like, why so much energy and focus into, let's do things on the national level when it's very clear that if it doesn't get blocked in the House, it's going to get blocked in the Senate or the president is going to veto it.
Well, so I think we can end the segment there. Once again, that was more of a discussion-based segment. I think JB had a story. I know Savvy got going like 4:30, which I do as well because I got to make a run as well. But so I can stay for JB's story. JB, so I'll pass it to you, JB.
Savvy, did you want to give some closing words before you have to take off in a few minutes?
Oh, Thursday, I'm doing a show. I'm actually going to be on Kim Iverson's show. She has her own exclusive Rumble show now. But Tara Reid is a producer for that show. So it's going to be a panel. So it'll be with me, Kim, and Tara Reid. It's going to be recorded. So I'll let you guys know like when it posts. And then I am going to be in DC on the 19th for the Rage Against the War Machine rally. So I'm going to try to stream that. And then the other thing is, what else was I going to say? Yeah, there's two State of the Unions tonight. This is my bad. Like, I'm sorry, guys, but I planned this yesterday. So both of us will be live tonight, like at the same time. I do have Kit and Colin are coming on to talk about that. And then
treat it like cable, flip it back and forth. Like,
yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't see no problem. Just watch both of them.
Yeah, back in the day, there'd be CNN coverage of the State of the Union, there'd be MSNBC, and then my parents would flip back and forth. Do that. It wasn't things with me and CJ. We decided like last second. Savvy did, but it's okay. We had a network, like it's okay. It's
not a problem. Like watch both of us. You got a phone and you got a TV, so watch both. You got a computer and you got a phone, so watch both. So absolutely. Are you streaming tonight, Savvy? Oh, you streaming your are you waiting? Are you starting at your normal time of 7? Or are you starting closer to the State of the Union? Is the question.
I'm starting at 8 because I have to cover that China balloon story. So I'm gonna cover that.
They just being the wind sorcerer, the wind god. That's why I'm serious. I can take that for.
Savvy, tell them don't blow things out of proportion. My obligatory dad joke for the day. Okay.
Make sure you tune in to Savvy tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern. She's covering the balloon story and then going into her State of the Union coverage. So make sure you're watching both of us. It's not a problem. Anything else?
Savvy might be less yelling over there. I think Rome gonna join us as well. And when I watch the State of the Union, the reason why I decided to do it is because I was thinking like, Mama will probably be watching it raging anyway. I might as well be on stream breaking it down.
Camera.
So usually, like if you ask my brothers, like I will have it on. I'm like, I'll be explaining to like, yo, this is bullshit. This is why this is bullshit. I'm like, instead of making their life fail, I might as well just jump on stream. That's why I decided to do it last second. So
let's see if Joe Biden say anything about policing in America tonight.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a breakdown before the show. Like he has this whole thing planned, and this is kind of like a preview. He's gonna have I'm on black on the guy's name, the guy who just got shot. He's gonna have their parents there.
Tyree.
Yeah, he's gonna have Tyree's parents in the State of the Union in the front row. Once again, using black pain for political expedience, and then they're gonna they are literally pushing for the George Floyd Policing Act, which gives more money to the police. So I'm spoiling my breakdown of this because I literally got a whole segment prepared for this. Like anyway, I'm crazy. Stay tuned. I'm gonna do a segment later.
Yeah. Wait, just one thing. By the way, guess who's doing the Republican response?
Who?
Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Oh.
Yeah. She's a legitimate politician now. Ain't that something? She's like a governor.
I thought you were gonna say George Santos. I'm like, this is too much. I thought you were gonna say George Santos.
Oh no! See, if George Santos does it, he better do it in drag. You know what I'm saying? Give some people something to look at.
Maybe George Santos is really Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Yo, look. You know what? No, you know what? To my love for all my queer people who are, especially my drag queens. Look, George Santos dressing in drag is actually a major insult to people who dress in drag because they actually do it right. George Santos would just mess it up. So, love to my people. Oh my God.
Mm-mm. All right. Well, thanks, Abby, and we will see you tonight.
I wanted you to be here for this segment, but damn. Okay.
Bye, guys.
All right.
I can say for the one last segment.
Okay.
Yeah, and then JB, let me do a couple announcements, and then as you set up for your segment, sir. Don't forget tonight we're gonna be having our what are we called? Oh, the State of the Union coverage.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, I almost blanked on it. So don't forget we're gonna be having our State of the Union coverage here. I think it's gonna probably start not at 5, not at 8. I'm saying 5. That's my time. Not at 8, but more probably like 8:15. We're probably gonna start. Here is the icon or the thumbnail to look for, the State of the Union, and it feels like the reason you see Putin and Xi Jinping there is because any State of the Union that's not including these two, I don't know what it would even be about, because that should be top of line. So make sure you check us out for that. The other thing, join our Substack. We are at 500, or we got up to 475 people. Let's make sure we are at least 475 likes. So if you haven't hit that like button yet and you're just joining us, please hit that like button. We are at 452. Oh, wow. So we can actually do 25 more. So 25 more to get us to 475. Any super chats you see, JB, we want to go through before we
yes,
go to the next thing?
Yes. Okay. This first one, I love our people. It says, JB, I almost choked on my chips. Oh, Lord. Look, don't choke on your chips, all right? Look, unless you're a war criminal. Never mind. Never mind.
Thanks for the super
But yeah,
yeah,
thank you. So, okay, Aberdeen71, thank you so much for the super sticker. I got a few of these to go through. Also, thanks to Number One Fan for the super sticker. Thank you so very much. Eric Gray says, as a teacher, I'm disgusted when anyone uses students as a way to attack teachers. Agreed. In case anyone forgot, Florida teachers are having to hide content-relevant material in order to avoid felony charges. Yes, you read that correctly. And yes, that's absolutely correct, because now any material that's related to LGBTQ or anything related to African-American history is now having to be hidden in Florida schools now. That's also very true. Thank you so much for that, Eric Gray. Also, ABCD, it says, capitalism is the only form of government where those in power destroy you behind your back while smiling to your face or singing you to sleep. Bars, ABCD, Thank you so very much for that. Another super sticker from Number One Fan. Thank you so very much for that. Landrew for the generous super chat saying, thank you, RBN, for educating all of us.
Landrew. That is very generous.
Give Landrew some love in the chat. Give Landrew some love in the chat. Thank you for super chat.
Thank you so much for that. Hasbin Hotel says, JB put into words something that I have been thinking about for a while. If not working equals you starve to death on the streets, that's constant duress. Most low-wage jobs want their employees.
Under duress, they do.
Marcus Pfeiffer, thank you so much. My emails to you don't come through. Super Chat won't let me point out to my Medium page. Did you Google Marcus Kasperzik Medium? I asked you to. I don't know if we actually got that. I got to check. Did you go to the info@redblacknetwork.com? Because that's our email now. So that might be the discrepancy there. Also, thank you for the super sticker from Number One Fan, as well as another super sticker from Number One Fan. Checking Rockfin. Yes, we have some tips on Rockfin. I need to get to that as well. And we'll get to that right now so that we won't miss it. And let me pop this out. And then enlarge. All right. And then let's share the screen. All right, people. All right, let's go through all that. And boom, boom. All right, thank you so much. Oh, yeah, this is a little too big. That's all right. All right, so thank you so very much for the chats from everybody. Let me see who is okay. So thanks to Dave Burt for the super sticker Drop to RBN. Can you guys comment on Black elected Dem leadership in Midwest and South?
Wait, say that
Emmanuel
again.
Cleaver.
I didn't hear.
Emmanuel Cleaver is my elected congressperson. He's a corporate Dem. Quentin Lucas is our Black mayor. I'm assuming that we're talking about Black elected Dem leadership. He's sided with real estate development companies. Casey Tennant is actually waging a war against him because he ran as a fake progressive. Like, he made all these promises to Casey Tennant, and Casey Tennant helped him win, and now they're waging a war against him because he sold them out. Which is why that's kind of like a lesson in radical politics. That's why we don't trust Democrats. But it's good that Casey Tennant is calling them out. So that's my comments on what my local leaders are. Remember, local politics is extremely important. It's more important to know what's going on in your local area than it is to be a national whiz, actually. So, go ahead, David.
Yeah, to follow along with you, my former congressperson was Val Demings of Florida. I lived in her district, and it was a cop. She was literally the chief of police for the Orlando Police Department. Her husband is Jerry Demings, who is the mayor of Orange County, which her district is also in. And so, so she is basically Black leadership, Dem leadership. And now we have Maxwell Alejandro Frost, who is now taking over that seat. He is now a Zionist. So, yes, and he touts himself as a progressive, but he really is for Israeli occupation. So, in Gaza. So, I have no love for Maxwell Alejandro Frost, and so that's who took over. Another tip on
I actually do got to bounce out because I'm already a little bit longer on playing. But catch me tonight. That's one thing I'm shout out. Nick at Night. Andrew will be returning as well, and Carlos Gallego. So Nick at Night on Wednesday to be good, powerful foreign policy conversation. So that's what I have coming up. A lot of content coming up. So unfortunately, I had to run real quick. So I pass it to you guys.
Yeah, I'll see you in a couple hours.
All right. Take care, Nick. Thanks. Ellie Marino said, thank you for the tip, says, is Sabby going to the anti-war rally on December 5th to 19th? I'm sorry, in D.C., February 19th, sorry. I hope to see her there, and if she's a speaker, even better. She will be covering it as a journalist. That's the only capacity that she'll be there for. But yes, she will be at the anti-war rally in D.C. So go and say hello. I think that's it for all the tips on Rockfin. Thank you so very much for all that. And I'm just checking to see if we had any more.
I didn't see any other super chats come through. But,
I think we're done. Yeah, we think we're done. Thank you so much, everybody.
And did you want to still do your segment, or because you sound like you were getting ready to? Oh, I was like, wow. He was like, thank you so much. I'm like, are we leaving? So let's
CJ. No.
All right, so I'll pass it to you, sir, for this next segment.
Okay, so I know you're in California and you were privy to some of this information. You were just a wee little kid back in the 90s, but I want to, talk about this. So Tupac Shakur was a prolific and prodigious rapper, artist, and in some circles, even an activist. He was more than just that, though. He was brilliant man. And unfortunately, he was shot. I think, was it 97, CJ? Was it, or 96? 96 or 97. But either way, he was shot and killed. And there was this whole thing about, East Coast, West Coast, gangs. That's why he got shot and killed, but they can't pinpoint his shooter. And it's kind of, there's always some stories surrounding that. Well, somebody put out a TikTok, and it was quite interesting to me because, and why is this relevant? Well, this TikToker, implicates that someone or something was involved in the death of Tupac, and he goes through basically 4 videos. And I think you're going to find this very interesting, CJ. And I hope that Sabby and Nick and Rome will be able to also see this, once they tune in. But this is going to be interesting. So I'm going to start with this first video, and then I'll get your thoughts, and then we'll move on to the second video after that. Okay.
There's been too much sweetness and light around here lately. So, do you know who killed Tupac? It's fucking terrible. I've spent my entire life studying the dark side of U.S. actions abroad and at home, and this story is just appalling. My prime source for this is the FBI war on Tupac Shakur. The thing to remember is that even when an intelligence agency carries out an assassination, there's still a bunch of bureaucrats. They do things in a similar way. So you look at the death of MLK Jr., you look at the death of Malcolm X, you look at how they shot JFK or his mistress, and it's following the same patterns over and over again. They have a certain way that they do things, and when you're the police, you don't have to be that good at covering your tracks. Once you realize you can shoot a sitting president and you don't really have to cover it up that much, you can get away with it. Of course, the oppression of Black activists goes much farther back. W.E.B. Du Bois, the founder of the NAACP, was a target of constant harassment. They wouldn't give him his passport because he was too good at talking, and he'd go to Europe and fire up everybody against the U.S. policies. Of course, Marcus Garvey was a big target of U.S. and British intelligence, and they harassed him to death. Then this continued into the Civil Rights era. For Martin Luther King Jr., the FBI and CIA offered $1 million contract to the mob bosses of New York and Chicago, but they turned them down. When they finally did shoot him in the hotel, one thing you'll notice is the first person that got to his body was an underground informant. That's always one of the tactics. Someone there to make sure the job actually got done, make a hand signal to the other shooters that are usually sitting around, making sure that this worked. Then the Black Panthers arose, and nothing scared the FBI more than the Black Panthers. You hear a lot about the harassment of the white activists with COINTELPRO and infiltration and stuff. That was, when you look at the files, that was 10% of the FBI's energy. During the 60s, it was focused on Black activists. By far, they were the ones getting heat. And there were lots of engineered murders of Black Panthers. Then, of course, there's a tactic of creating front groups to cause division. For instance, the U.S. Slaves was a group that might have been an FBI front there to divide the Black nationalist movement. Famously, the Chicago police shot Fred Hampton dead in his bed. And they had these intelligence programs in all the major cities, tracking Panthers, murdering Panthers, harassing them, getting them arrested on bogus charges. All of the classic techniques of COINTELPRO were being applied to Panthers all over the country to disrupt what was working really well. That was the problem, is they were effective. They were a socialist organization giving back to the communities, and they were Black people with guns. Everything the U.S. hates. Now we'll go to part 2.
So far, what are your thoughts so far, CJ? Oh, you're muted.
Man. Oh, this light. Oh, that's why. All right. What I was going to say is that, or what I was saying when I was muted, was that I think he said it at the end. Go to the second video, because that was going to be my question. Was that, are these videos linearly connected? So this is one video. He just had to chop it up into separate segments. Okay. And then, so far he's setting the introduction for how, it's like I haven't seen this video, but how evidently, whatever
to
conclusion he comes to,
of Tupac,
the conclusion he came to with Tupac, he's setting the introductory foundation for how the United States does this all the time, and they've done it with Black leaders and Black people before in the past, and give those examples. So, good start. Good start.
Yeah. Okay. Let's continue.
To continue on the murder of Tupac, the reason the Panthers are so important is, for instance, the Panther 21 trial, one of those big tragicomic show trials. His mother was involved in all of this. She was a key Panther leader throughout this whole time. And so Tupac grew up in this spirit of activism. For me, I had no idea Tupac was such a genius from such a young age. He was acting by the age of 13. He was going to this magnate art school in Baltimore studying dance and Shakespeare and acting and writing. He founded an activist group that worked on anti-violence campaigns and AIDS prevention campaigns. I mean, he was apparently a glowing star from the very beginning. He apparently had an almost photographic memory as well. And in high school, he was reading hundreds of books at the graduate school level and getting them into his political awareness of class in the United States. At 17, he was elected the youngest ever chairman of the New African Panther Party. And it was around this time in the mid 80s that a lot of Panthers started calling themselves New Africans. That was the way of people saying it. If you want to learn more about that, Sanyika Shakur, who is formerly known as Monster Cody, has some great writing on how he came to the New African movement and what it means. I think his writing is really powerful. With all this notoriety, you can imagine what happens next. The police harassment begins. He stopped in Oakland in 1991, and the police beat the shit out of him for jaywalking and choke him until he's unconscious. He sues the city for $10 million, and he gets $15,000. Later on that year, there is a drive-by shooting outside the release of his first film, Juice, and many people suspect it was a hit orchestrated by the COINTELPRO ace, Richard Held. Luckily, no one was hit. So let's pause and see what Congress had to say. When they were looking into what the FBI was doing with these COINTEL programs, here's what they instructed agents to do who were doing this. Against political musicians, show them as depraved person, call attention to their habits and living conditions, explore every possible embarrassment, send in women and sex to break up marriages, have them arrested on marijuana charges, start personal conflicts and animosities between them, send articles to newspapers showing their depravity, use narcotics and free sex to entrap them, use misinformation to confuse and get records of their bank accounts, get some specimens of their handwriting, provoke target groups into rivalries that may result in death. They used all of this against Tupac and against many other political musicians who were trying to make a difference. Of course, the backdrop of all this was the giant war between the Blood and the Crips, which was certainly engineered by the FBI. They wanted that to happen. But by April of '92, the Black Panthers were working to organize a truce between the largest chapters of the Bloods and the Crips. It was working. It was ending this black on black violence to work together to end the system that was destroying Black lives in the United States. To continue on the murder of Tupac.
So that was also very interesting, especially, about how it's systemic, and it's basically the perpetual black on black violence is actually being driven by state actors. TJ? Oh.
Am I muted? Are you talking? JB, can you hear me, JB?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Now I can hear you. All right. Now I can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. But yeah, so
yeah, so on this you can hear me, right? Yeah. So this second this second video, maybe I should wait until more of it is played, because it feels like because I know some of the story and I don't want to talk more than what the the story, get ahead of the story is what I'm saying. So let's let him speak on it a little bit more.
All right.
The Murder of Tupac Part 3. So it was around now in the early 90s with the Blood and Crip truce happening. The people working around Tupac and his mother came up with the idea of the thug life movement. They wanted Tupac to take on the persona of a gangsta and be a rapper in that scene. He wasn't really that. He was a sensitive young artist soul, but he knew this was the way to appeal to young gang members and try to get them to abide by certain codes that would decrease Black victimization. And so you had really important people in the movement like Bell Hooks and Daniel Smith coming out and saying how uplifting, pro-choice, and anti-abuse. The lyrics of his first 3 albums were. I mean, he saw this as the best way he could use his genius to make a difference. Of course, this is when Reagan and Bush privatized national security inside the U.S. and allowed people that weren't U.S. intelligence operators to carry out operations in the U.S. and not report it to the National Security Council. So basically, just like they deregulated finance, they deregulated U.S. intelligence and allowed all these even shoddier actors in the CIA and FBI to operate. So all of Tupac's popularity brought on this heat. As he said, I never had a record until I made a record. The power that came to him from his increased fame also brought on a lot more police attacks. In Atlanta, the police shoot at him in an incident that appeared to be engineered. In New York, the infamous street crimes unit seems like they tried to engineer another shooting that luckily didn't work. And let's think about how Tupac's music was getting out into the world. There is a long history of the CIA trying to take over cultural organizations. And in the case of music, there's a long history of them using the mob, who is always their buddies, for carrying out jobs like this, to control the music industry and the studios. And that was certainly going on in rap music. And so it seems like the famous rap label Death Row Records, it was funded hugely by Time Warner and has links to both U.S. intelligence and the mafia. I know it's one you always hear great things about, but it could be that that is a front as much as the Paris Review was a front. In addition, the FBI started to foment what became as the East-West rapper war. They sent fake letters from imprisoned New York Panthers to each other, passed on false information to Huey Newton and the New York Panther 21. They used everything they could in journalism and dirty tactics to create a war between these rappers. Then they use this feud to simply shoot people, because they could shoot them and say it was some rapper that did it. And it seemed like they did that a lot. For instance, a LA cop found solid evidence linking the LAPD working with Death Row Record employees to orchestrate the murder of Biggie Smalls. Over and over again, Death Row guards attacked people like Snoop Dogg or got other people in trouble and got them arrested.
This is deep, man. Did you want to comment, or want me to move on to the last part?
Oh no, yeah. Let's listen to the last one.
Okay. All right.
The Assassination of Tupac, Part 4. So by June of '96, he's 25. God, he was young. And he was a megastar. He had just released his first Death Row album, All Eyes on Me, which was a double CD that made $10 million in sales. And it was the highest week sales ever, besides the Beatles anthology. And he was making so much money, and he was plowing that money back into activism and the Panthers and all these things that the U.S. intelligence hated.
Mm-hmm.
He had just finished his 3 CD contract for Death Row, and after a dispute about the amount of money he was supposed to be getting, he fired his Death Row lawyer, which pretty much signaled that he was leaving. 10 days after that, he was supposed to go to Mike Tyson's fight in Vegas, but he was wary about it. It didn't feel right. Vegas is mob territory. He didn't like the event timing or the locale. There's a long history of the U.S. working with the mob to do its dirty business. Despite those worries, he decided to go because he actually had a benefit concert the next day. This is a great part story. He got busted for weed possession, and the elderly white judge read his life story and loved him so much, called him a remarkable young man, and the only thing he sentenced him to was to do a benefit concert, which pissed off the district attorney so much. So he decided to go to the fight and see his friend Mike Tyson so he could do the benefit concert. But the day before the fight, they fired one of his 2 bodyguards. And the day of the fight, they told the other bodyguard that he wasn't allowed to carry a gun. They went to the fight, and on the way out, Tupac got drawn into a fight with several people. Something that seemed engineered to make what happened later make sense. Because then they got in the car, and everything about that car ride made it seem like it was a U.S. intelligence planned procession to Tupac's death. He was in the car with Suge Knight, who was the big player in the story, who was probably an operative for U.S. intelligence the whole time. And they made Tupac drive. They didn't have bodyguards in the car like he always had. So he drove away, and later when they stopped at a stoplight with someone in the entourage to his left and a bunch of pretty girls pulled up behind.
Yeah.
And he was distracted by
I thought it
them.
was
Just then, a white Cadillac pulled up and put 13 rounds into the car. None of them hitting Suge Knight, 2 of them hitting Tupac in the chest. There were bike cops right there. They did nothing to secure the scene. In fact, they chased the car down and made a run for it before they got everyone out on their hands, with their hands above their head, and then finally took Tupac to the hospital. Tupac spent 5 days on life support, but he never woke up again. And so that's how the murder of Tupac seems like one more U.S. intelligence assassination to take out people who are trying to make the world a better place. Tupac was a beautiful soul using his powers, and this is what it got him. Like I said, it's a terrible story.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I wouldn't comment on each specific detail that he has given as accurate or not, but the overall story, like, to me, this is a known story that everybody knows, that Tupac was killed by the government. Like, this is a known thing out here in LA. Nobody's under the assumption that it's something else. Now, it could mean that it was carried out by special ops or some like a cop or LA cop.
Yeah.
Like this is the understanding of what happened, and it's the same reason people like the whole Suge Knight didn't get shot. Like, that's been that's an old sort of point that people make to prove what this guy is saying here, is that you know how ridiculous that is. You get somebody is shot and the other person is not shot at all. That means that person is a target. And then some of the other just things that led to this, some of the other assassination attempts that he survived, like the one in New York where he thought Biggie had set him up. Like, it's like all of this stuffs are pretty known entities, but it's good to see that on TikTok, because you would think Tupac is an older rapper. Like, why are these younger people into him? So it's good that you're seeing that it's radicalized. And I think TikTok is one of the more radical platforms, to be quite honest with you, because every time I go on there, it's real easy to find content from socialists and communists. So it does bring a smile to my face, JB, to see that there's still people still talking about Tupac, because this is devastating to LA when this happened. This is devastating to LA when this happened. So it's good to see somebody still, bringing the story to light. And I'm assuming his video probably got a lot of views. So, people a new younger generation is hearing the story of how government looks to stifle social change, and they know that Black people can start that shit, because we shift culture as a people, as far as so that's why they got to kill people like Fred Hampton before anything gets started. That's why they got to do something like this, what they did to Tupac. So those are my thoughts, and that's why I wanted to wait to the end, because I didn't want to give off that I knew the story, and I didn't want to comment in the sections and give too much before he actually said it. So this is great discovery by you, sir.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because I was raised heavily religious, and so when it comes to hip hop and rap music, it was looked down upon. It's gonna be to listen to. So I really didn't get, like, I'm just now starting to listen to these folks, even though I'm 38 years old in 2023. And so now I'm just like, oh snap, okay. And so now, like, for instance, I'm starting to listen to Biggie now. But the thing is that I wasn't privy to this information, a lot of this information growing up, because we were taught, especially by some older Black people, was like, oh man, these young kids embracing violence, and that's all it was. When really was it really them doing that, or was it more nefarious forces? And so it's coming out years later that it was actually more nefarious forces to keep us from actually achieving our liberation. So this is just amazing that this information comes out, and the fact that he talked about it in detail. I am happy to learn this information. It actually makes me more radicalized now that I'm knowing more about it.
Yeah, and that's what I was kind of alluding to earlier. That
Hmm.
I hope that these stories help, because it's a musician, and because Tupac is
Hmm.
he's known his music and all that stuff. This is
Hmm.
this is this can be a way of radicalizing a person who would
Yeah.
normally not be in politics, and that's why I
Yeah.
like the retelling of this story. So
Yep.
great
Definitely.
story, a great segment to kind of round our stream up. JB, I didn't hear you say if you were joining or not, so I'm assuming you're not joining tonight, or did
Well,
you mention
CJ, who are you to assume, brother? No, I'll come on for a little bit. I might not be able to do too long because I have to be up at 4:30 in the morning for
Yeah, I
dialysis. So
remember. Yeah,
but
however long. Yeah,
I can come on for a
30
little
minutes.
bit,
Yeah.
and puke with y'all at the BS that Joe Biden's gonna be spewing all over. So yeah, I'll be there for moral support, putting my arm around you, saying it's okay. I know he's full of BS.
Yeah, because it's gonna take
Yeah,
some wine or something to make sure we're able to get through this. So make
more
sure
than
all
that.
y'all that are watching that you come back tonight at 8:30 Eastern. We're
Yeah.
gonna be having our State of the Union RBN coverage. So make sure you come back for that. What else? What
Mhm.
can people expect from you coming up for you, JB?
So this Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, I will be having on Jimmy Dore, so I'll be speaking with him. And then Noah Krejcik from Midwestern Marks, I will be also having a conversation with him on Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, so I'll be, having that as well. So that's going to be a very interesting conversation. And as for next week, I'm trying to look at my calendar. I'm trying to remember. Oh, and next Sunday, I will be co-hosting Due Dissidents. So I'll be on there with
Oh,
them. Yeah, so I'll be a special
somebody's
co-host
out,
on
or
there.
you're a third. Somebody's out, or you're the
No,
third host.
yeah, Russell's going to be on vacation, so I'll be covering. So I'll be on Due Dissidents at 4 p.m. And Savvy will not be live, so she'll be at the Super Bowl. So all y'all who watch Savvy, y'all better come over to Due Dissidents and watch me at 4 p.m. So
This is Sunday.
this is Sunday, yes.
Okay. All right.
Hmm.
All right, and then you'll see me in about an hour or 2 hours and a half. So take a break, pick up the kids,
Me too.
hang out a little bit, and then wait for this disgusting garbage that'll be tonight. So, all right, everybody. I still gotta find a outro video here. I haven't done one in a while, believe it or not. Not a while, in a couple of days. Yesterday, my internet just started acting insane. So I'm gonna leave you with another video, Anna Casperia and Ben Shapiro interview. And we'll leave you with that. And okay, let's bring it up here. Also, I don't see any other new super chats. Thank you for all those that did
Oh
donate to
wait,
us. Or did you see one after
I
everybody?
think yep. This one says I think it's to CJ. It
And
says
he's not
C.
representative of most Americans.
Sorry, that's automatic. My
No, it's
my
okay.
Go ahead.
It says CJ. Can you look over this essay, Discourse of Voluntary Servitude? Never heard of that before.
That vaguely
Thanks,
sounds
Emma.
familiar. Discourse of voluntary. That vaguely sounds familiar. Maybe I have looked at that a while. But yeah, discourse of voluntary. That sounds very very familiar. I'm wondering if I covered it in college or not. Because I took a lot of Black Studies classes, and believe it or not, my
Oh,
Black Studies classes were taught by actual people in the struggle. Like Dr. Malana Karange was my professor for like 5 or 6 of my classes, and he's the one who created Kwanzaa. So yeah, he's the one who created Kwanzaa. So Long Beach State has some good Black study teachers. I went to Cal State Long Beach, so they had some good Black studies teachers over there, and he was one of them. But yeah,
cool. There's another super chat that just came in. Says Anna, name my taco. Says Anna's dad is a landlord. FYI.
that brings to light a lot of what she says about the homeless, what she believes. I did not know that, so I'm gonna have to do a segment on that. That'll bring, that just fills in the picture. That just gives it a fuller picture. Okay, now I completely understand what's going on now. So.
Yep.
All right, JB, we'll take a break. I'll see you also in a couple of hours, 2.5 hours. I'll see all of you in the audience in 2.5 hours. Make sure you come back, and we'll toss up your comments as this video play. Thank you for joining us, and this is Anna with Ben.
The conversation increasingly becomes dominated by lunatics, and I don't think that's representative of most Americans. And there's also this problem of lumping in everyone together in like this neat little box of ideology, right? So I think in the minds of a lot of people on the left, you are the exact same person as Tucker Carlson, right? And I think you're different. I think you're different from Matt Walsh. I think you're different from Candace Owens. You guys are all on the same network. I commend you for having differences of opinion on the same network. And I'm sure it can be uncomfortable at times, but there are nuances and differences. And I think it's important for people to be cognizant of that, because I don't want to be lumped in with someone on the far left, right? I have significantly different opinions from them on certain matters. And I think it's important to know what those differences are and not let, again, the extreme ends of the spectrum represent the entire country.
So, one of the things that you mentioned there is the idea that you have to run on something, not run against something. And obviously negative campaigning is the most effective form of campaigning, despite all of the happy talk about how when you campaign for things, people rally behind you. People who are policy wonks tend to do very poorly in elections. People who are attack dogs tend to do very well in elections, because that lizard part of our brain that senses threat is really activated by a perception of threat on the other side. Oh,
well, actually, can I interrupt you on that?
Sure.
Because I agree and disagree. So let's go back to 2016. Because with 2016 several years away, we can now really analyze it for what it was. Donald Trump's campaigning certainly had a significant negative component to it. Negative campaigning was part of what he did. But he also offered, or at least paid lip service to, something that Americans were concerned about, which was bringing manufacturing jobs back to the United States, really taking care of workers in our country, maybe reconsidering some of the foreign aid that the federal government shells out. That appealed to his base, so much so that even today they're so loyal to him, regardless of what he does. So he actually did give people something to vote for. Whereas all we got from the Democratic Party during that election was, ooh, Donald Trump's dangerous. Isn't he so dangerous? Oh my God, don't vote for him, because if you do, you'd be racist, this, that.